And welcome to the June 16th regular meeting of council. The city of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. So before we begin this afternoon, the city has proclaimed June 30th as Indigenous Survivors Day to recognize and honor the enduring resilience of Indigenous communities. This date is an opportunity to promote reconciliation and justice, reflect on the ongoing challenges faced by Indigenous communities, and highlight the importance of supporting their cultural heritage. I encourage all residents to read the news release on the city's website and take a moment to reflect on this important date. Also, this Thursday, June 19th, the city is celebrating its 80th birthday. We invite you to drop in anytime this Thursday between 4 and 6 p.m. in the atrium here at the PCTC for birthday cake and refreshments, some music, and a chance to share memories of the city's past. There's quite a display anyways. I noticed the pictures throughout the community so far, so some of the heritage pictures, and they're really quite interesting. So contrary to popular belief, I wasn't here at 80 years ago, but there was a lot of people that are very recognizable anyways, original founders of our community. So it's great to see those pictures. On July 1st, the city is once again hosting the annual Canada Day celebration, including a parade, food truck festival, live music, and many other activities in the Parksville Community Park throughout the day. For information is available on the city's website, and we look forward to seeing you a great turnout again this year for the Canada Day celebrations, including that amazing parade. It's not a long one. It's not quite like the Calgary Stampede parade, but it is memorable just the same. Council, we're going to move ahead with the consent agenda. Could I have a mover and seconder for the minutes of the council meeting held June 2nd, 2025, as well as the approval of the council meeting agenda for today? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Grenz. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Nice to see a full house, council. Nice to see everybody live and in person. Best way to have a meeting. Thank you. We have two presentations today. Our first presentation is from RCMP Staff Sergeant DeCone on the update on calls for service and incident statistics. Staff Sergeant DeCone, you up first. I think we have a chair that might fit you. Yeah. You're live. Thank you.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll go through the slideshow. A lot of it you'll see in the monthly reports too. So it's just kind of an overview of that. I did do some comparisons with regards to last year, just where our file count is. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised this year. So far, so good. Files are up, but Parksville's down. So it's pretty good. So I'll go over the quick update for the detachment, quarterly updates. It's kind of I'm going to do for the whole beginning of this year. Crime stats overall, just a breakdown of our services, and then I'm going to include our annual performance plan, the initiatives we're going to do this year to try to make things a little bit better for everybody. So of course, just the standard breakdown, 39 members we have total. Parksville, which is in highlight, you guys provide us with 18 FTEs or full-time employees. You're all well aware of the breakdown of how the employees work. We have a number of civilian staff. Our municipal employees are increasing as we transition out of the PSEs or provincial or a public service employees as they move out. If it's a position that's been funded traditionally by either Parksville or Town of Pelican Beach, new municipal employees are taking their place through attrition. So nobody's losing a job. We're just hiring on municipal staff, which is fabulous for us. It's just a better process all in all with doing the hiring through the city. And we've been very fortunate. We just have a new young lady starting today, actually. So that's perfect. Who's a Parksville employee. And then, of course, all of our extra stuff we have in victim services through sources, restorative justice through Arrowhead Community Justice Society. And then I just threw the files down there. So this is basically till June 1st. So it just shows you we are up about 4.5% total this year over where we were this time last year for the same number of calls. And then just I threw the Parksville call specific. So you can see for Parksville for this year, it's actually down quite substantially. So 2,300 roughly this time last year, we're down to just over 2,000 this year. So it's great all in all. Yet file counts are still up. So for our annual performance plan, and these are stuff we work on all the time. These aren't a yearly or a quarterly change. These are just the standards that we all work by. So just the first one where it says enhanced road safety. So that's just for the past 3 months, give or take. 339 traffic contacts, about 90 hours in different school zones. And that's for all of the Oceanside area, not specific just to Parksville. It's for all the area. 45 IRPs. So those are your impaired driving investigations that we do. We've attended 170 crashes. Unfortunately, we've had 3 fatals here the last little while. So it's been predominantly on the highways and out on the inland highway. So there's still files that we deal with and take control of for the investigation. Crime reduction, obviously we monitor 10 individuals. So those are individuals in the community, all of the Oceanside area that have, whether it be a curfew or some sort of court order condition. So we try to monitor those and do those compliance checks. Obviously QFN, these are just different community stuff we do. We're out there all the time. Foot patrols, generally it's me right now in the mornings. You'll see me wandering around all the different communities. School visits, 68, that's on paper. We're there every day. So it's just kind of an arbitrary number. We're always in the community. We're very fortunate to have an actual school liaison person that's still welcome in all the schools. So it's fabulous for us. Victim services referrals, we refer a lot of our files go. That's the victim's right. So we have to refer those files to victim services. It's a police-based victim services. We're very fortunate to have them here. So 96 of those individuals elected to have the callbacks and work through the process, which is great. Obviously, our partners, we partner with victim services, sources, obviously, Aerosmith. We've had 3 RJ or restorative justice. So those are files that have been presented to the court as there's some stamp there. They could potentially go to court. They've just diverted that through another process. And we've got 3 of those pretty substantive files that we're working through right now, which is great. Keeps it out of the court system rather than clogging up for issues that can be settled outside of the courts. And interagency meetings, that's this type of stuff right now. So here's a breakdown. So it takes us right back to December. So it's just an overall for our calls. And again, like I've reiterated to quite a few times, you'll see big spikes in numbers and, like a 433% increase in harassment. I mean, we're only talking 16 files. So the numbers, and generally we've been very fortunate. Our files are for the most part on the downturn for our criminal code stuff, whether it be persons crimes or property crimes. Our increase in files is generally the Mental Health Act, substance abuse stuff, general nuisance files we classify them on. So they're not generally criminal code stuff. It's all the nuisance files we would consider. So that's basically where we're at. You can see we are up a little bit for the year. Over this time last year, priority 1 calls, they just started to go down. We were very fortunate. They've been up a little bit the last couple of months and they've kind of taken a dip. So we're actually now for the first time below that, our numbers for last year, which is great. Online reporting is online reporting. There's not a lot of publicity put out about it. And generally those are lost plates, stuff like that. It doesn't require any sort of substantial investigation. They sit in a call audit and we get to them when we get to them. And then curfew checks are the curfew checks. We're always trying to push those. Those are part of those compliance checks. So just authorized strength, like we talked about in the beginning, there's 39 total. The PBL or provincial business line provides us with 13 members for the Oceanside area. Municipal business lines, that's the combination of the town of Qualicum Beach and city of Parksville, provide us with 26 members total, 66% of the strength. So you can kind of see the breakdown of calls for service. So provincial calls for service, 46%, give or take. Municipal calls are about 54%. So you can kind of see it's not 100% square. Everybody's not paying their full pull, but then there's other provincial things that do come in after the fact, such as, the building and those types of things that kind of even that out a little bit. Parksville, of course, you provide us with the bulk of our police officers, 46%. Total files for last year, we had 13,000 for 2024, and the kind of the breakdown for last year's numbers, you can kind of all see them there. So now we move on to our APP. So these are what we come up with yearly. This is kind of working with our partners and talking with the CAOs and stuff, and we come up with like ideas that we're going to do. Hey, what can we work on that are stuff that we can manage? It's not going to be too much of a burden, but it's directly focused specifically to the community. So specific traffic and pedestrians, I hear a lot of issues regarding school zones. They're always an issue, whether it be parking, pedestrian traffic, and then there's always the big issue with the walking from the beach into the downtown core. So we're going to work with some of our partners, Speed Watch, BC Highway Patrol, and some of those to kind of focus on that as best we can. And there's a measurable matrix we can do with just seeing the VTs that are issued. We're not going to be the bad guys out there issuing jaywalk tickets and stuff like that, but we may do warnings and just some, go into the schools, those types of things to pass the word, get it to the kids. They can talk to the parents, right? To obey the traffic laws and stuff through that area. Mental health and substance abuse, for us, that is definitely partners. That's not something that the police can change or affect generally. So we're going to work with Island Health. There's a few different programs that are potentially coming down the pike to speed up when we're dealing with MHA or those types of files, preventing us from having to take the individual in an IMO all the time and just basic stuff like that. So we're partnering more with certain individuals to try to bring those files, because it's always the few that create the most of the problem. So if we can deal with the few at the lower level and get them the help that they need, then they're not creating calls for police, and in theory. Bylaws, we're going to start doing some joint walks with Bylaws in the morning. Again, that'll probably end up being me and possibly Sergeant Swan. So that'll be pretty good. And that's just basically focused on the downtown core. So that'll be like clearing out the vestibules, those types of things in the mornings, just making sure people are moving on their way if they're living rough or whatever it happens to be before the business is open, in theory, especially through those summer months when the crowds are out walking around. And then property and vandalism, with all the new building you've done down in the new park and a few other, art projects and stuff like that, the city's had some issues. I've noticed it for quite some time. So again, we're going to work with bylaws to enforce some of the bylaws regarding those forward files where we can, if it's legitimate mischief and you've got a much better camera system down there. So provided we can get those calls right away. Did do some work with the cities where they were reporting everything, but they were reporting it specific to Parksville, giving us those calls on Friday saying, okay, we had this one on Tuesday and this one on Thursday. So talk directly with the director. They got that sorted out. That way we can act on them when they happen rather than a collection from a few days ago. It's hard for us to deal with those. So that'll be much better. And then of course, encampments and stuff like that in the city, getting on them quickly, working with bylaws, working with other partners, whether it be the SOS or whoever, to try to get people moved along and not let them have that chance to set up. And then I'll leave it open to questions.
Thanks once again, Staff Sergeant DeCone. I appreciate a lot of it. It's a good news report. It really is. You've got a handle on it, and some of our numbers are down, and I'm most appreciative, as well as what you're observing. Anyways, what needs special attention, and the pedestrian thing is a big one. I know. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have a island highway intersects our city, yeah. And it's difficult for tourists to understand that, because so maybe we're looking into that with their transportation master plan. So hopefully we can remediate that as well. Council, I'll leave it open for any comments or questions for the Staff Sergeant Moilliet. Go ahead, Councilor Krantz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our delegation, thank you for coming today, and thank you for all the work you do in the community. And I'll do an additional shout out for the members showing up at community events, including my kids' graduation prom this weekend. So that was great to see a presence at that, and some other events around the community. I guess I have a few questions, and maybe I'll start with the one at the end, and that you were talking about at the end there around encampments. And we've heard talk about there being outreach workers coming to the community. So maybe if there's any updates on working with any island health outreach workers, if there's anything like that happening. There was a fire at an encampment along Island Highway recently, I believe. I think that's what it was. And then
on Shadow Road, are you talking about the one on Shadow Road, or
along Island Highway, like the inland highway?
Yeah.
Sorry. And then some concerns about animal interactions with encampments have been mentioned around that I've been seeing. So I add to the mix, I guess, also evolving provincial legislation and approaches to some of these challenges. So I guess I'd just love to hear some updates around those general topics, and maybe where we may be able to, as council, help support the work you do with anytime we are advocating to provincial or federal government. Yeah, I'd love to hear on that.
For sure. Again, a lot of those issues are social issues, right? So it's not, the police are crim code guys. That's kind of our job. Yet we've been kind of the continuing download from every other agency. We're always the first call. So Obviously, we do the best we can. The police absolutely do not want to be the people that go and take these individuals' homes. So an abundance, of caution is used when we're dealing with those. Our best line of defense is to not let them establish too much, right? Or keep them at least moving, so the individuals are moving around. They're always going to find somewhere else. They need a place to be anyways. So, right. But as far as working with other agencies, yeah, we certainly do partner. Recently, you just signed off a letter requesting for the Chattel Road one with the RDN, asking the minister potentially, hey, can you just put up some sort of barricades to prevent the RVs? The tents aren't the end of the world because they're always movable. It's the RVs and the stuff that costs money. Nobody wants to touch them. Nobody wants to tow them. And if we do end up being the agency that tows that away, we pay. So it directly comes out of, your budgets trying to deal with those and basically getting rid of them, right? So that's a big challenge for us. So if the city has a means of, preventing individuals from getting in somewhere or putting up stuff that doesn't, barricade the use of the property, but barricades putting vehicles or RVs and stuff, that helps us a long way because they can't get super established and create some of those issues. As far as the wildlife thing goes, we certainly work with conservation as best we can. If there's issues or encampments in the area, we'll talk with conservation if it's going to be and again, the Chattel Road one, they ended up, bear went through there and trashed everything. So there was an issue there, and that's a public safety concern, right? So we do partner as best we can. It's just, it's certainly not something that the police are going to be able to fix. It has to be at a legislative level for sure for that. So we do the best we can.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to our delegation today. Thank you very much for the presentation and for all the work that you and all the members do. I have a couple of questions, if I may. One is about staffing. Is the detachment fully staffed at present? I'm guessing maybe not. And I'm just wondering how close is it to being fully staffed if it isn't fully staffed?
Yeah, we have 2 vacancies, which are both been named members. So we're hoping to have both of those full this summer, which will be perfect. Yeah, so then that'll be it. We'll be full. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, mate.
Thank you. And I know that, time and time again, when you brought forth a report to us, there has been a mention of the challenges in dealing with the mental health issues, substance abuse. Now, I know that there are other communities that have someone ride along, someone who is a mental health, I don't know exactly what they have. Different communities may have different people who assist the RCMP, but who are not RCMP, and other places may have a difference with bylaw so that they have community safety officers. I'm just wondering if you feel a need, would it be a benefit for the Oceanside area to look into something like this? And if there's anything that you have, any information that you have about how well they're working elsewhere?
I think they work very well in Nanaimo. It's all cost, right? About $217,000 a member. So, and then you have to win over Island Health, who's willing to pay a nurse to come and do it as well. So to a city like Parksville, you're probably looking at a $350,000 a year touch to have one of those individuals and that car running. And again, that would only be on a 4 on 4 off. So then you have the other days of the week where you're not going to have that individual unless you elect to go 2, and then you're about $700,000. So it's cost. It's all costs associated, and it's not a shared resource because the one in Nanaimo are owned by Nanaimo. There are 2 of them, right? But we're competing 39 members versus 179 members. So the tax base just it allows for it, whereas here we just don't have the tax base, and we couldn't afford to take one of our 39 and have them just doing mental health files. I don't think we have quite enough to justify that at this point. Yeah.
Well, look, go ahead.
I really appreciate that information because it's been some time that I've been wondering if there's something that we can do, not only Parksville, but the area can do to both alleviate the stress, among other things, on your members, because that is a cost as well. So it is a balance, and but I appreciate that you're thinking that we're not quite big enough to get there yet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Staff Sergeant, for your presentation. I want to go to the priorities that you mentioned, the first being the pedestrian safety. And like the mayor mentioned about the transportation master plan. So I was wondering if you had an opportunity to provide some input to the consultant when we were doing community feedback on that.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the early people that had the dealings with that. It was sent to me. I've attended a number of meetings with the directors. More recently, we had another presentation here. So yeah, both myself and obviously Chief Norris have had our input certainly into that document as it's been put together. And again, from that knowledge and what I learned from, what I know of the traffic master plan so far is that's how we were able to draw out that, okay, clearly pedestrian's an issue. It's a challenge. Citizens have brought it to the attention. So it's something that police should probably focus on.
Follow?
Yes, thank you. Just similar to the previous question, I know we recently did the emergency evacuation route planning. And I'm guessing you had an important role to play. And if you can share a little bit with us what information was shared and if there's anything, perhaps I know it's a work in progress, but if you can touch a little bit on your work with the evacuation route planning.
Yeah, we attended the meeting. We attended the day with fire and other first responders. Ambulance was there as well. I mean, it basically, we went over, we said where we feel there'd be potential pinch points if we had to do an evacuation, where people could, stay in place or remain in place. Just some demographics of the community, what we thought would be challenging and would not be challenging, Parksville, Qualicum Beach versus other communities, what might be a challenge here specifically. As far as the outcome, I think that there's a whole group doing that. So I don't think it would be pertinent for me to talk any further on that, but certainly we were involved and I believe they took what we had to say. And I'll find out when I get the document in the end, I think.
All right. Are you good? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Staff Sergeant, for your presentation. It's always gives us peace of mind, quite frankly. And I know that everyone's working hard. My question is about legislation, the Mental Health Act. Do the RCMP ever get involved with I guess it's provincial legislation? Do you ever get asked about what to do?
Certainly
Like, consult with them?
Yeah, certainly at my level, no, but I mean, E-Division, like the division in Surrey, they're certainly going to be considered a partner and they would work with them and, let them know what we can and what we can't do. A lot of our training is guided by that too, depending on what Island Health or whoever happens to be putting out. They have some say on what our training is. Of course, we're federal. So the training is at a federal level versus specific to provincial stuff, but we do have some training specifically to the Mental Health Act.
And is it documented, your incidences like that, the kind to do with mental health, does it get reported applying to these people?
Well,
Do they know?
Stats Canada, right?
They get it.
So all of our files,
Okay.
every file we attend has a scoring, and that
Okay.
scoring then goes up and that's all Stats Canada.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Also, I appreciate that you're involved in the transportation,
Mhm.
our report. We're looking
Yeah.
forward to getting that.
Yeah,
And
me too.
we know it's very helpful to have
Yeah,
your
for sure.
input. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Anybody else, Council? You good? Follow up, Councillor Gore.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Travis. This is about the special events. I know there was an email from staff about the G7 and some of our members being sent. I just want to make sure we have our service levels are not impacted, especially considering the Soccer World Cup next year. And we will likely be asked to provide some support. So is there talk already to augment sort of services required at BC Place? And are we ready to not have our service levels impacted because of that?
The overall, and again, I'm going to be speaking above my pay grade here, but the overall goal of the RCMP is to always not affect the service delivery at the community level, right? That's our main goal. That's our priority, right? That's your contract policing. That's what we deal with. When Article 9 is declared for, incidents like this or major events such as the FIFA next year, yes, we will provide members. That's part and parcel of having the RCMP as your police jurisdiction. So that's just something that you do. But I mean, even, your Abbotsford, your Vancouvers, everybody has to kick in. So they still are sending members. So ultimately, I mean, we have, right now, we have 3 members sent, and I would hope that nobody's really recognized that they've been gone for a week and a half already, and they'll be back next week. So yeah, we shift around, maybe I have to take one of my plainclothes guys and move them onto the watch, or, we're able to kind of maneuver within the detachment. I take a couple extra files, whatever it is what it is, right? So we'll always make it work and try not to let that impact. If there's a cost issue, there is the provision to potentially JV or, journal voucher some of that money back if we're having to provide overtime. There is a means to get some of that money back. So I'm tracking any overtime specific to whether I get any money back from that. I don't know. But
Thank
I'm
you.
tracking it
Yeah,
for my own-
no,
my own-
that was my question. So if it affects our like overtime and stuff, so
Yeah.
make sure we are not paying for, the feds, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. The goal is like any business, right? I try to do it as cost effective as I can. So if I can somebody shifts around, then that's what we'll do, as opposed to having just the overtime come in. Yep.
And also to follow up on that as well, I've also been curious, do the municipal police forces contribute to the special events, or is it just strictly a national, the RCMP that respond to these events, but like Vancouver Police?
Yeah, something like G7 for sure. It's generally the RCMP that would do that, contribute. Something like the soccer next year, it's heavily VPD is
Okay.
heavily involved in that. Victoria Police Department's involved. So yeah, they're definitely, Delta will be, Abbotsford will be. There's that big of a need that everybody has an expectation that some first responders will go forward.
Okay, good. I just didn't know whether it was just a national police force initiative, or if those actually municipalities picked up part of the tab as well.
Yeah, everybody pays the.
Yeah,
Yeah, the toll.
we understand the events and we welcome the events to our area, but I know what difficulties it causes for you. I appreciate that. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franz.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Staff Sergeant. One of the things I see online often is reports about people with phishing attacks, losing their life savings to scammers online. It's really disheartening, very upsetting. I can only imagine for the people that go through that, how it impacts their lives. And we know that it's always evolving, the types of scams and the way that they're getting information about people and able to attack them. Is there any public tools out there for people to stay up to date on what kind of things to be aware of and how to protect themselves? Is there anything the RCMP puts out, any tools? And
nothing specific that the RCMP puts out. You're gonna put me on the spot. I can't remember the name of it. There is a website, which I certainly could get to Kiva to share with everybody, or what I'll do is I'll put it on the next monthly, but it's like Scam Busters basically. And it's just it's an online site. You can go there. It'll give you like the latest and greatest. And then it also says like what to do if any of these incidents happen. I think we've done at least 6 or 7 specific fraud talks, fraud and safety talks, at the Berwicks and the different communities around this year alone. We do probably one a month for sure with OCSV, Oceanside Community Volunteers. So we try to get, the targeted communities. We really try to get those. And then of course, there's always like sextorting and it's endless, right? And that is in the schools. And then we have our schools officer do those talks in the schools about safe use of cell phones, social media, all those types of things as well. The best way to protect yourself is just not to get involved right from the get-go. But you all heard it, right? A boyfriend from who knows where, and he just needs $10,000 to get out of jail, right? It's shocking how many people fall for it and send that money.
yeah, it's always evolving the types of ways that they target people. And I know we do training through here at the city, and a lot of employers offer it, and keeping up to speed on it. It's impossible. It's impossible. Yeah.
As fast as you can keep up on it, they're coming up with new ideas to take your money.
Yeah. Last thing I just want to mention though too is I just want to give some credit to noticing around the community. It is looking very nice and clean. The graffiti problems we've had years past, I know often it's related to just a few individuals that will be doing the taggers, and whether it's through the restorative justice programs or if they leave town to go somewhere else. But the town's looking very nice and clean. It's feeling a lot more safe around as well. And it's a credit to BYLAWS and RCMP and so on. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's about it. Staff Sergeant, thank you very much for your presentation once again. Look forward to seeing you out there on the streets first thing in the morning. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll see you out there. Yeah. Thanks, Staff Sergeant. Take care. Council, we have our next presentation is from Kerr Leidal regarding a water use management and planning study. An update for Kerr Leidal on the status of the city's water use management and planning study. Welcome. Very much looking forward to this. We've been, I was pleased to see that you're coming so early into the study. And I'm looking forward to it. And then I see this report here. So I'm looking forward to diving deep into this one too. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. So sorry. Stephen. Okay. And you are, sir? Craig. Thank you.
Green. Here we go.
You're live. Go ahead, gentlemen. And yeah, you got a presentation up on the wall already, there we good to go. Hear you loud and clear. If you just direct the microphone towards your mouth, if you could, Steve. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
Thank you.
Big up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for having us here today. As noted, we're here to provide a update on the water use plan for the city, and just a general update. We have a few slides to go through, and I think you have a package as well. So we'll Craig and I will be tag teaming the presentation as we go. Go next slide. So this first slide is generally a summary of what will be in the water use plan once complete. Starting off with a documentary of the history of the system. As you see the timeline along the bottom of the page there. Just trying to summarize some of the previous study, primarily the 1972, 1988 study works that were done, which we are incorporating into the work, as well as the timeline and overview of when the ERWS and AWS was created and the construction of the plant and so forth, and all summarized into the 2025 water use plan, which will be the document itself. So in essence, we've developed hydraulic models thus far and packaged that together into a water balance model, which we're looking at the water availability for now and into the future. And within doing that, we're reviewing the current water demands as well as looking at a focus on the summer peak demand, which is primarily where the highest use occurs. We've also within today's presentation, we'll provide a little bit of information about the reliability of the water supply as it is today, but we'll be doing much more work looking at the future on that as well as subsequent scenarios are developed. With the ultimate goal of preparing a future capital and infrastructure plan along with the O&M needs for future for the water supply system. And along with that, some additional water demand management and conservation initiatives that could be contemplated in essence to delay any major capital works that may be needed. So to start off, just thought I'd provide an overview of the system. The picture on the left there is actually from your website, which depicts the dam up in the mountains and of course the Englishman River and the pump station just below the highway. And of course the Springwood and railway well systems, which feed into the supply and supplement the surface water source. And on the left there is a monthly operational update, which many of you will have seen as well, but just thought I'd highlight those as available information on the website. In terms of the watershed area, this figure essentially shows the location of the Arrowsmith Dam and intake on the left there. And we really just here wanted to highlight the relative size of the Arrowsmith Lake sub-watershed versus the overall watershed. As you can see, it's about 1.5% of the total watershed, and correspondingly, in terms of the annual runoff, roughly about 3% of the annual runoff of the entire watershed as well. So that's what is stored and supplied to supply environmental flow needs and domestic water through the drier summer periods when the river levels are low. And in terms of the distribution or transmission system rather, this is the figure that shows that highlighted into yellow, as well as the location of, again, the railway and Springwood well fields and key reservoirs, as well as the Nanoose Bay Pump Station, which feeds into the Nanoose system. I hear maybe pass it over to Craig to give a little more detail.
Great. Thanks, Steve, and thanks for having us, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I'm going to start at the top end of the system and talk about the reservoir a little bit to start with. So the Arrowsmith Lake Dam Reservoir is impounded by a concrete dam that's about 14.5 meters high and about 75 meters long. And it was finished construction in 1999 and began operation in 2001. And it stores about 9 million cubic meters of water behind it, and that's licensed by the province to support both environmental flow needs in the Englishman River as well as for community water withdrawals. And just to put it in perspective, 9 million cubic meters is about 90 days of storage, roughly, to fully support the current demand and the EFN. So if there was no flow in the river at all, it would be about 90 days, just to kind of put that into perspective. So this is a cross section of the dam so the dam on the right there. And sort of if you sort of took the lake and the dam and you cut it like a slice of bread, and it's showing sort of the range of potential water levels in the reservoir. And there's a couple of things to note here. The first is there's a gravity outlet underneath the dam. So that can flow when the water level is between 828.5 meters and 810 meters. But when the water level drops below that, then the only way of getting water out of the dam is through a siphon. And that siphon is about 2 feet in diameter. And so there's really two zones. There's a gravity storage zone, and that's about 7 million cubic meters. And that has a capacity to let the water out between about 0.8 of a cubic meter and about 1.3 cubic meters per second. And then there's a lower zone that has about 2 million cubic meters of storage. And the maximum that it can release is about 0.76, 0.8 cubic meters per second. So it's really limited in terms of how much water can get out of that lower zone. And that becomes important when we're looking at the reliability of the current system. So in terms of the environmental flow needs, this was a study that LGL did, consulting environmental consultants back in 2014 as part of the work for doing the Englishman River Treatment Plant and the new intake that's located at the Inland Highland Highway. And what this is showing is it's basically the quality of habitat in the river with changes in discharge. So as the discharge increases, it shows how is the quality of the habitat increasing for different species and different life stages. So the two curves at the top there are for the top one's coho fry, and then the next purple one is steelhead fry. And they kind of show that the quality increases to kind of a maximum and then it decreases again. And that's just because the velocity starts to get so high that the fish can't swim in that particular piece of the river on the riffles. And then, so it's sort of, there's an optimum. For the other two lines, they're sort of a little bit later stage with par. And they're really showing that there's really not an optimum until you get to really high flows, which are sort of well beyond what you would expect in the summertime. So kind of more water's better. And it's really showing sort of below, there's a critical threshold. It's about 0.7 cubic meters per second, or it's about 700 liters per second, that the habitat in the river really drops off. And so we want to try and make sure that the flow stays above that. And then we've been working with the city on looking at an update to the operating rules for the reservoir. And right now the recommendation is for an environmental flow need of about 1 cubic meter per second. That's currently being reviewed by the regulators, but that's the assumption that we've used so far in the analysis. So there are several water licenses in the watershed. So in terms of the water license, it's essentially the maximum amount that is permitted to be taken out of the river or its tributaries for different uses. And those licenses are permitted by the province for those. And this pie chart is showing, again, this is the total amount that's permitted. It's not what's actually being used, but it really shows the 7 million cubic meters that's licensed for withdrawals at the intake is by far the largest license holder in the watershed. That green sliver is irrigation, and that's primarily in the Morrison watershed. And some of that storage is supported through dugouts, so they're not actually, it's not connected directly to the stream. So this next slide is showing average discharge in the river over time, with the blue line showing the average before the dam was constructed and the orange line showing the average after the dam was constructed. And what it's really showing is the benefit of the dam. So before the dam was constructed, there was the flows in the river were sort of averaging about 0.8 cubic meters per second, with the lowest recorded of about 150 liters per second, or 0.15 cubic meters per second. So it was really quite low before the dam was constructed. That's now bumped up to, on average, about 1.3 cubic meters per second through that summertime period. So really what's happening is the dam is storing water through the winter and the spring, and that's releasing it in the summer to support both environmental flow needs in the river and the community. So there's really kind of two seasons. There's a non-operating season and then an operating season for the dam. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. So the top graph on this slide is showing the recorded water levels in the reservoir over time. And the bottom graph is showing recorded discharges in the Englishman River as the black line. And then the orange line is showing recorded discharges from the dam. And just so that you're aware, the scale on the bottom chart is logarithmic, just so that you can kind of see those smaller discharges. So like that first point is 1 cubic meter per second, and then the one above that is 10, just so that you can get a sense of the scale. And essentially, what this is showing is, again, it's sort of that seasonality of the system. So through the winter, there's lots of water in the river. And during that period is when the dam is refilling. And then in the summer period, the low-level outlets are opened and water is released from the dam and managed to try and maintain the environmental flow need at the gauge downstream of the intake. And so going back to that original slide about the watershed area, so the environmental flow needs and the withdrawals for about 3 months, right, is being supported from water that's been stored from about 1.5% of the watershed, right? So just sort of keeping that in mind, right? Like those are kind of the numbers that we're sort of dealing with. And I'm just going to focus, just to kind of show that, I'm going to focus on 2008, 2009 season with just a couple of graphs. So the graph on the right is showing these are total volumes. So this is in millions of cubic meters. And the dark blue is the amount of flow in the river. So there's lots. And the two small little slivers are the amount that's being withdrawn for the community, and then the other water licenses. On the right, though, is similar graph showing the distribution of flows in the river. So the blue is the natural base flow in the river. So that's what's coming from the watershed. The green is what the community is using being withdrawn at the intake. So it doesn't include the groundwater. It's just the surface water component. And the red is the amount of water that's being released from storage at the reservoir to support the environmental flow need. So you can kind of see the relationship there between how much the community is using and how much is being released for environmental flow needs. And I'll pass it back over to Steve. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and to complement the surface water, we have a little summary on the groundwater supply within the system as well. So this chart is showing the blue on the right is the licensed volume or capacity available for the city's Springfield and railway station well fields. And in the middle, the orange is the 10-year average demand, with the green on the right is the latest data, which would be what was used in 2024. And currently groundwater supplies roughly 25% of the city's water needs. And the wells are being operated in a sustainable manner such that there's the drawdown is in the aquifer is not an issue at present. And also just wanted to flag that it was noted that there was a slight reduction in groundwater use as the treatment plant came online, as there was more viable surface water available. And then further to that, to round out the water system summary is the water treatment plant, intake and treatment plant, of course, where the circle there is just showing today's capacity with the potential expanded capacity in the middle column or column to the right, indicating that there's roughly 3 times the capacity available or the space within the structure facility to provide that in future. So in terms of the total system flow, this chart here provides a summary for the last, I guess, 2021 to 2023 summary of the daily source flows coming from either the Englishman River, of course, through the water treatment plant, and then also adding in the Parksville well supply in green, and then Nanoose Bay supply. And we've included Nanoose Bay because we need to look at the entire picture in terms of the demand on the system with all the population for serviced under the entire Englishman River water supply area. So it gives you an idea of that seasonality through the peaks, obviously, or through the summer months. They're July, August, June, July, August, I guess, and it sort of shifts on a year-to-year basis, whether that the timing is sometimes occurs earlier as air temperatures are higher, or rainfall patterns are change as well. So it's a good picture of the seasonality. And then this is the same data here summarized in a total volume means. And of course, the biggest slice of the pie is the Englishman River water treatment plant water supply, with the wells in Nanoose Bay. They're represented as well in orange and green. So in terms of percentage wise, it's about 64% supplied by the water treatment plant, with 27% on the city's wells and 9% Nanoose, with a total volume needs of just under 3,000 megaliters per year. And breaking that down a bit further, we start looking into the maximum day demands, which is our sort of peak summer day where the water use is highest. So in this slide, we're depicting the what we call outdoor or seasonal use, which is primarily outdoor use, irrigation and the like, as well as indoor use. And so we compare the two values and really get a better picture of where that water's going through the peak summer time. So as you can see there, it's about 72% seasonal use or outdoor use or irrigation and the like, versus the 28% indoor use. and all totaling up to about 19 megaliters a day, which is the current max day. And then just breaking that down a bit further.
If I may.
Yeah.
Council, I'm just going to hold questions to the end. If I can, just make note if you can on your hard copies that you have as we're going along, because otherwise, your questions may be answered as forward in the rest of the presentation. So just mark it down and it will definitely leave room for it. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To break down the indoor base water demand, there's some information here, just looking back at the historical use on the right-hand side of the slide there, comparing 2014 rates to 2024 rates. And this is again is only what we call base demand, which is the indoor water use within the household, generally residential indoor demand. And you can see Parksville is sitting at 156 liters per person per day, or per capita per day. And that's the same, funnily enough, it's exact same as it was 10 years ago, which is interesting to note. I believe Kerr Leidal had done the study in 2014 as well. So I did fact check that with staff here this week, with our team this week rather. And comparatively, the Nanoose Bay Area has declined over the last 10 years, let's say. And there's various factors that go into that, whether it's new housing stock or enhanced water conservation measures and such. And then on the right is a list of sort of comparable municipalities as well. And unfortunately, I don't have an average for those, but Parksville is average or better, I think, from what I can see with those numbers there in general. So in general, the base day demand is quite good for internal residential use. So that provides the summary of kind of the background and workup of existing information. And what we have here is a schematic that's been generated for the report, water use plan report, to show the stages of work that are occurring. So we've gone through a lot of the data collection and model input stages, and working through the tools which are shown in the middle there, the blue and the orange, whether it's the hydrologic model or the water balance model, and feeding into the water supply reliability estimates, as well as some work on hydropower potential. And so we're now within the red circled area looking at the various scenarios, which of course, first we'll look at the status quo scenario, whereas if things continue as they are, water use continues as it does today into the future. But going forward, we'll be looking at more detailed demand management and climate scenarios and such to really do a further assessment of the water system to come up with the capital work plan for the future. So I'll pass it back to Craig here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so in terms of the analysis that we've been carrying out, so to date, we've been developing a model that essentially simulates operation of the system, the reservoirs, and the reservoir and the intake in the groundwater, both for looking at the status quo system, as well as looking at different options and alternatives moving into the future. And so it accounts for the storage at the reservoir. It accounts for the amount of water coming off the watershed throughout the year, as well as the withdrawals at the intake and also groundwater. And we've compared the model results to the records, and the model is performing well, and we're happy with that. So we're moving forward with sort of next steps here. So this is a plot of some of those results, and this is for a historical period. And really, what this is showing is, in terms of from the dam and the reliability of the dam, it's those periods where there are several years in a row where it's dry. So if we get a dry summer followed by a winter that has below average inflow, and the reservoir is not refilling, that's kind of what is really driving the reliability of the system. And so the chart on the top is the non-operational period. And the orange line is showing the maximum reservoir levels that were modeled. And the blue are the volumes coming from the watershed upstream of the dam sort of over time. So you can kind of see that mid 1980s period that was sort of right around Expo 86. And I remember that summer being nice all summer. So that's one of the periods that we have modeled what would have happened had the dam been there, right? We understand the dam wasn't operational at that point, right? But that's what would have happened had the dam been in operation. And then it's really showing that during those years, it kind of struggled to refill because of those low inflows. So that's kind of the main focus. So basically what that's saying is, providing additional storage at Arrowsmith Lake isn't really going to help because it's limited by how much inflow is coming into the reservoir. So in terms of system reliability at the moment, the findings are finding that about 8 out of 10 years on average is sort of the reliability of the system currently. And the way that was modeled was to essentially run the system through without considering the stage 3 and stage 4 watering restrictions. So just like if the system was just to run through without those in place. So understanding that those are available tools, but they're really there for an emergency, not to kind of look at the reliability of the system. And so the other results there are, so the maximum number of leaks that was supported by the siphon in this analysis is about 23. So it's pretty significant. So in terms of climate change, so we've run some analysis looking at changes in inflow. We have yet to start looking at the impacts of climate change on the reliability, but this is just sort of a preview in terms of the flows into the system. And the two charts on the left are showing the precipitation and in blue and the inflows into Arrowsmith Lake in orange. And the top is the baseline period, which we're using as 1981 to 2010. And the bottom one is the projected 2080s period. So that's 2071 to 2100. And the main thing to see there, and the charts on the right are the same except for the Englishman River inflows. So the total flow into the Englishman River. One thing to keep in mind with these charts is that they're presented, the discharge is presented in terms of a volume where you take the whole volume and you spread it out across the whole watershed. It's just so that it can be comparable to the precipitation. So it's in a depth, just for comparison. That's why they're similar. And the main things to kind of indicate, and this is sort of kind of pretty well understood, is going to be drier, longer summers. And also snowpack is a big driver, and that's going to be reducing in the future. So one of the big changes is in June. So right now, typically the reservoir kind of starts late, like early July-ish. Well, that might be a whole month sooner in the future. And so that's going to mean that there's going to need to be a longer period of time when the releases from the dam are supporting both the flow needs in the river and the community. And then the other piece is in the winter, the amount of precip is increasing. And so there will be more inflow in the wintertime, which can sort of offset some of those, potentially offset that reliability. But keep in mind, these are averages, and there's a lot more variability in the future. So the potential for those year-over-year droughts to happen is going to increase into the future. So we have to kind of keep that in mind when we're looking at these charts. So let me pass it back over to Steve again.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, so moving on from that, we're taking a look at that future population as well as we will be looking at the changing climate into the future, but we also look at the changing community needs in terms of water use for the population. Along the bottom in red there is the city of Parksville population, which is growing at roughly 1.5% per year out to 2075, which is the timeframe of the study at this point, which is primarily infill with some small areas of greenfield development. And for the sake of the chart, the Nanoose Bay area is also shown there, and the growth there flatlines after 2045 as there's limited development potential out there at present beyond 2045. So in terms of water use, this slide is some information to depict where that seasonal water use goes on an annual basis in general. Granted, these are sort of textbook values that are provided to kind of show an indication of household water use in a few different scenarios, with the top left being a 4-person household with a small, or not small, but a reasonable sized irrigated yard or garden using roughly 395 cubic meters a year, compared with the extreme, which might be a 2-person household with on a 1-acre lot that's also irrigated, would be using sort of 4 times or more water use there, about 1,400 cubic meters a year. So that's good, 2 good comparisons there. And then there's a couple others in the middle. And then I guess on the right is just some indicators of things like a vacant house. If there's a small leak, how much water use would be lost there, as well as leaving a sprinkler on overnight or something by mistake, that kind of thing. And then of course the top middle is a comparative of the more densified living in terms of an apartment building where a user would be 91 cubic meters a year, primarily because they don't have that irrigation component. So, and on the demand side, management strategies, this on the left is a summary of kind of what's occurring now. We have the regional district's Team Water Smart program, which is a great program and covers, of course, the region, and the city has its own water restrictions, water conservation plan, which is which I guess was recently updated as well to now fall more in line with RDN's water restrictions through the summer period. But there's also other strategies which are listed in the bullets on the right, which we'll be looking at in terms of trying to reduce that seasonal water use primarily, because as we discussed earlier, the household domestic use is quite good at present. And a couple of the key ones here are conversion to smart meters, so people can actually see their water use on a more regular basis, as opposed to the quarterly water meter billing, which is current practice, which is similar to many municipalities, as well as irrigation upgrades, looking at different means for irrigation tools, whether it's rain sensors, smart controllers, drip irrigation, and things like that. So there's a number of potential programs and strategies, which some of which are in place now, but there's also increased efforts that could be done.
Great. Great, thanks, Steve. So that was Steve was touching on some of the conservation side. Going to focus a little bit on some of the areas that we're thinking about. We're just starting to work on this and looking at some of the future storage options. There are a few options within the watershed itself, mostly focused on natural lakes. One of the advantages of using an existing lake is just that for every meter height of surface, you actually get a fair amount of storage area, and you only need to construct a dam on one side of it because the rest of it's all contained. So that in terms of cost effectiveness, that's usually one of the more cost effective areas is to look at an existing lake. So there are a few that we've looked at. These are sort of based on some of those original studies. They also identified these areas as well. So one is Fishtail Lake, which is in the watershed just adjoining Arrowsmith Lake. Another is the Shelton Healy Lake system at the headwaters of the South Englishman River. There's other potential areas as well that we will consider in the watershed. There are a couple of other areas where there are not necessarily lakes, but lower lying areas that could potentially be used for reservoir. And there's alternative off-channel storage along the main stem of the river and groundwater. So just some considerations. So as I mentioned before, for Arrowsmith Lake, like there might be some additional capacity, but not a lot to be able to provide additional storage at Arrowsmith Lake. Healy and Shelton Lake dams. So in terms of, I'm comparing this back to sort of that finding around how much more water do we need, which is about 1.2 million cubic meters. But again, keeping in mind that was just for the current condition. So that would be about a 4 to 5 meter high dam, about 250 meters long at Shelton Lake. So just in terms of the size that would be. But one of the things with Shelton and Healy is that there would need to be consideration. One of the requirements for storage, surface water storage, is to provide environmental flow needs. That's why Arrowsmith Lake has that requirement. And that's from the province and through DFO. And so there would need to be a requirement to release an environmental flow need for the South Englishman River. For Fishtail Lake, that one sort of about 10 meter high dam, about 50 meters long, roughly. That one has very difficult, costly access. There's no road up there right now, and it's very steep. However, there'd be less of an environmental flow need requirement. There's other sources in terms of those other areas I was mentioning that we'll also look at. The alternative off-channel storage along the Englishman River. So just to put into perspective, 1.2 cubic meters. So say about a 3 meter deep pond is kind of like what an excavator can kind of dig roughly. So that's 40 hectares of area that would be required. So it's about 55 soccer fields. So just to kind of put it into perspective in terms of the area that would be required to provide that. So there's limited areas in the floodplain for that, and it will also have impacts on the riparian zone. There's land ownership that the watershed is primarily private forest lands, and there's potential to supplement base flows in the river through that, and there's maybe some limited opportunities to supplement it, but it's difficult to quantify. It's kind of difficult to kind of rely on, but providing some benefit in terms of providing additional wetland capacity could sort of a consideration in terms of habitat enhancement, but maybe not from a water supply perspective. Additional groundwater to support community supply. So one of the areas we're going to look at is there is some additional capacity remaining in the existing wells up to the water license amount. So we'll look at what benefit there might be of that. Going beyond that, it gets a little bit difficult to assess without going into really analytical groundwater modeling at this point, which is beyond the scope of what we're looking at with the to look at sort of those interactions between the different wells. So we'll look at sort of up to the existing water license amount. And then the last one, there's been some like previous studies sort of looked at a more regional approach, and we'll touch on that. We'll make sure that that's at least discussed in the assessment. And then, yeah, back to Steve.
So this slide is a quick summary of the solar and hydropower work that's underway as well. We have done some initial data crunching on the potential for the Aerosmith Dam, whether there was to be a small hydropower facility there, and as well as a fishtail if a dam to be constructed there for water supply. And at first cut, if you look at the numbers alone as a business case, it's not economical, but there are other factors which could come into play in terms of environmental benefits too within the environmental flow needs too, in terms of accessing water within Aerosmith Dam, accessing water that's below that siphon level. But one of the big costs there is the transmission power to get power from the dam site down to approximately to the Inland Island Highway. I think it's not quite that far where there's a large hydro line. And so the chart or figure on the right there is also showing is a tool that we have that looks, and in general terms, at the viability throughout other reaches within the watershed. And in general, it's showing is not generally not viable, whether it's just because there isn't that grade differential needed to create the small hydro, and also some considerations for fish presence and such. In terms of solar facilities, there is potential there, but again, it's costly for the payback. So we are looking into that a bit further with some of the larger facilities. So in summary, I guess in terms of next steps, we will continue with the work looking at the future climate and demands, as well as environmental flow needs, and summarize the capital infrastructure requirements and demand strategies that will be recommended. We will, of course, be looking further at the power generation possibilities and summarize that information as well. And of course, the potential new sources will be summarized, looking at the timing for implementation for any such project, and complete the water use plan, and hope to be back here in sometime this fall to present on the findings. And that is all we have for today. Thank you for the time.
Wow.
Sorry for taking so long.
No, this is amazing. That's a lot of information, and I really appreciate, what you've done so far on this. As you went on, you answered most of my questions that were popping up in my little head anyways, as we're doing. And so you answered an awful lot that was going on. As I want to say that I didn't see that you approached the podium with any trepidation, like you had really bad news. You were going to deliver this, like, by the end of this week, we're going to be out of water. I didn't get that from you at all. And so I'm I'm very appreciative of that. So to have the experts advise us that, like we're here, but if just a general outlook, I know where you're going with this, and you're going to have feasibility studies on various options and so forth. Are we in any imminent danger at this particular place, like where we are at climate change and droughts and everything like that? You said, I think you had a 7 or 8 year, one of your figures that you said anyways, that we can get through with our our proposed population growth, 7 to 8 years. We're good for. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, thanks.
Or quantify that maybe.
Yeah, so on that, so the work that we've done so far is really focused on sort of the current demand and current climate, and it's looking about the system has the capacity to sort of supply about 8 out of 10 years. And to put that into perspective, though,
okay,
the sort of the provincial guidelines for small water systems are 9 out of 10 years, and most communities are more in the 19 out of 20 years.
Wow, okay.
So just to put it into perspective in terms of,
right.
But that being said, though, like I'd mentioned, we were doing the analysis not including the stage 3 and stage 4 drought. So that's sort of in terms of for right now, it means that those two levels may need to be implemented more frequently than what would sort of be let's say typical for a community. So just it is because of the limitations of the inflow to the reservoir, there is a limited potential. Now, one of the pieces on the operating rule side is there's recognition from both the provincial and federal regulators around that capacity. And currently they're working through the recent report that we did and sort of to come up with sort of that looking at, okay, are there some opportunities to balance the environmental flow needs with the community water supply needs? So that's sort of that's that balance.
Right. So we're under extreme pressure, as you know, as many the municipalities in British Columbia and even the Prime Minister of late is like build, baby, build, and they're like build more because we have a housing crisis identified here in Canada. This is no different here on Vancouver Island in particular, but obviously we have to have the infrastructure in place to do that. And so we have to get an idea. We're complying. Actually, we're batting way above average for our build out that we're having for the multi-uses and so forth. And we're on good track, but we want to make sure that we have that infrastructure in place anyway, so we can supply the increased population growth that we have on it. So that's why you're here. And I really appreciate that and recognizing the fact that the Arrowsmith Dam is limited, but the environmental, you mentioned quite often the environmental, it has to be considered anytime we use a lake or like Fishlet Lake or anything like that, that we have to also provide environmental habitat. So that answered a big question to me is why so much of the water out of Arrowsmith Dam is actually for habitat, which is, like I'm all for the environment at the same time, but I recognize the fact that, that dam was built with taxpayer money type of thing to recognize that we had a domestic water need and so forth. And that an awful lot of that is going to the environment, which is all a good thing. All I'm saying is that we need more storage, so that we can offset that. The only question I have, and then I'll turn over to council here. When we talked about the water license users that we're using down through the Englishman River all the way through, and you have records of their operational licenses and so forth, or their with the province. Who monitors that? It'll be because like if they have an intake in the river anywhere down and so forth, is there a provincial authority that's actually monitoring the amount of, like, does the license say, okay, we're going to give you a license for, X amount of liters per day or whatever on that? Is there anybody that monitors to say that they're not drawing more, that they haven't put an expansion, that they haven't created another huge agriculture demand out of that water license? Is anybody watching that?
My understanding, so there's two parts to that. One, the first, there for specifics for some water licenses, depending on the type of use and the amount, there is a reporting requirement. So that the amount that's withdrawn is reported to the province, but that's not for every license.
Okay.
And then in terms of the monitoring, so as an example, on the Coxsila River, where there during periods of very low water, there is monitoring, but generally my understanding is no, there isn't. It's sort of more just sort of during those periods of low water when the province is trying to balance all of the different license holders in terms of who has access to water throughout that low period. So that's my understanding.
My concern, of course, is like releasing with whatever the operating agreement is anyways approved, that we're releasing that. But by the time it gets down to the gauge at the Orange Bridge, how many users have been pulling off of that? And that sometimes I know with our operators, when they're opening that valve, so much that they have to open up a lot wider than what they think, because by the time it gets out down to the flow meter at the Orange Bridge, there's been other users that have been drawing it off. And so that's many times that I'm suggesting that we have difficulties maintaining that habitat flow, because I'm worried that other users are actually pulling out of that river anyways before it gets to that meter. And to obviously where the fish habitat where it requires it most. So I'm just worried that we're trying our best to, meet that habitat environment requirement, but at the same time, as are there other people drawing that water actually before it gets down there, and also recognizing the fact that the base flow of the Englishman River itself, historically, we had a workshop fairly recently, within our term, suggesting that there were times in the past that the data shows that they're in August, September, the worst times of year, of course, for the river, is the river actually ran dry, and there's quite a few peaks with that. So we didn't have a dam there. So obviously the habitat suffered, obviously, at that point, the fish and so forth. It'd be a hard one to gauge, but recognizing that we have the dam with the idea that hopefully that never ever runs dry again, if we measure that water carefully as we release it and plan for it and not releasing it early and so forth. So like holding on to that storage for as long as we can. And then after that, it just becomes math. We will maintain that, in September, like enough or even projecting it into October. So that's what I know our operators are already doing that. They've worked out that it's been quite a calculation, and I'm appreciative of that. But at the same time, it's a big if, because we're dealing with a full dam right now. Though it's at the start of May anyway, so a full dam. We don't always have a full dam when we're released, so that just changes that math calculation. So that's why we have you guys doing this. So that's I appreciate what you've done. I'm going to open the floor to questions from council. Mary, Councillor Beal, are you okay? Okay. Councillor Gore, go ahead. Okay. And then Councillor Price.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the background that you provided, all the literature review that you've done on this topic. It's very important topic for our community, as you're aware. What I would like to know is what knowledge gaps will this study fill? Because we know there's a lot of studies that are being done in the past, like you referred to. There is already a study being just completed, the phase 3 study by the RDN on the aquifers in the region. ERWS has commissioned a water systems capacity study, as you might be aware. So I just want to make sure there's no duplication. What knowledge gaps specifically will this study address? I know like Shelton Lake as one of the options for the sources has been referred way back in 2012. And, you've been quoted as one of the references in that study. So specifically, what knowledge gaps are we looking to fill with this study? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think the main knowledge gap that this study is aiming to fulfill is to be able to take all of those different pieces of information and combine it together into a single plan. So there has been analysis done previously on capacity on the water supply system. There's been previous analysis done on water demand, but this study is pulling all that information together and looking at it holistically. So I think that's probably the primary the primary knowledge gap this study is aiming to address, is being able to pull that information together. The other piece as well is on the climate change side, is using the most up-to-date climate change information that is available to be able to look out into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Frost, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the mayor to our delegation, I appreciate seeing a lot of these options here, because there are things that have been rolling through my mind for a while, but of course I can't speak to them because they're just, my thoughts looking at the maps and looking at the lakes and water area for storage options and that. Referencing Fishtail Lake, Am I correct that lake then runs into the Englishman River downstream from it? It's not that it would dam it and then feed to recharge the Aerosmith Dam. Is that correct? They join up downstream?
Yes, that's correct. So it's a tributary, just sort of the next tributary upstream. So the idea would be very similar to the Aerosmith system, where the water would be stored and then released down the small stream that flows into the Englishman River, and then it would supplement the flow in the main stem Englishman River. Yeah.
So when you talk about water surface sites, then you mentioned having to do like a offstream storage is one of the options though, but is it possible then instead of damming up at Fishtail Lake to dam up where the two rivers meet and create a storage area at that point? Because it looks like to me it's in a deep valley point where, you know, it's far enough upstream where maybe not as much of environmental issues, just coming off the steep section of Fishtail Lake. Is that a possibility, or is that kind of out of this world type thinking?
It's a possibility. I guess it's a matter of the efficiency of the topography. So the advantage of a lake is you have a nice flat surface that you're then storing on top of, compared to storing in a valley, which more is a V shape. So the dam would need to be higher to provide the same amount of storage. So that's the primary reason for looking at existing lakes. But there were a couple of other locations that were looked at in those original studies as well. And we'll revisit those. But
is with that kind of line of thinking though, is just creating a secondary dam in the same river line rather than paralleling it, but storing a second, you know, I know Aerosmith Dam itself is difficult to build up into, but building a second storage in line with it is kind of the line of thinking. And with that as well, there's a lake between Fishtail Lake and Aerosmith Dam on the same ridge line side of Aerosmith, the hidden lake.
yeah,
And there's a road access that goes almost right up to it. It doesn't seem like it's doing much of anything but sitting there. Could we not just put a little tap into it and drain it into the Aerosmith Lake?
Yeah. And that one of the we've considered Hidden Lake. The challenge with Hidden Lake is just its watershed area is very small. And so we're talking like 1.5% of the watershed area for Aerosmith Dam. So it's even less compared to the overall Englishman River watershed. So again, it's how much water can we reliably get off the watershed to refill the storage? You can build the storage, but it's a matter of just looking at that. So like initially, it looks like it might not be quite big enough, but
in its current state, like if you dam it, could it potentially hold more? Or like I say, it just seems to be a low hanging fruit. Like if you just knocked out a little channel that, you know, even though it's 1%, it also could be 1% of the cost. There, like I say, there's a road already up to it.
yeah.
Just as something, right? Like as
It definitely, no, I thank you for the suggestion. It's something that we can look at, because we're just starting to think about different options. So
I mean, not as so much as a suggestion, but it's a curiosity for me. So that's why I want to know, like, if it's a possibility, if it actually would resolve anything. Because to me, always looking at it looks frustrating. I go, hey, it's right there. Like, why don't we just grab that water? If I may, just one more question.
Go ahead.
You talked about evaporation being an issue. To how much of a problem is it? How much water do we lose to evaporation? And is there any kind of like evaporation protection we can implement for, you see down in California, all the balls they put over water and things like that?
Yeah. So on average, there through that summer period, it's typically about 300 millimeters. So of storage on top that you're usually using. Between that to half a meter is typically the amount that you're losing to evaporation. So in terms of the overall storage, it's relatively significant, but it's not a big component. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a sort of warms my heart, actually, because I've been involved in water all my life. Thank you, both of you. I wanted to ask you, did you ever, I just heard this the other day, did you ever know why it's called the Englishman River?
No, I'd be curious.
I'll be sharing this with you. In 1850, an Englishman came and he drowned going across the river. So I was quite curious because my family came here in 1886. So this is before my family came here. So I thought that was educational. I had never, why the Englishman? Because we always talk about it being the Englishman. So anyway, before we had you do this study, I had so many people talk to me about the water and all the problems with the water. And I was very, I would phone the city and find out from the engineer what's happening with the water. This is a few years ago. So when I became elected, I was right there and I wanted to have this study done. So I appreciate all your efforts with this, and it will be used for sure, and give us some backup information, because I always had the confidence there was enough water. I used to be swimming in that river when I was a kid, and it's always had fluctuations. But now since 72, we've had the dam and we're doing what you're doing. It's, it's better. It's much better than it was. So we should be grateful. So thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. Excellent.
Are there first-time speakers? Go ahead, Councillor Grants.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our delegation, thank you very much for all your work so far. Looking forward to the continued evolution of the work. I guess a few questions, and I think the mayor touched on this a little bit around there's some concerns in the community about availability of water and whether there's enough to supply the current population, let alone future population as we grow. And maybe something you can help us understand is there was a comment made a number of years ago by the former mayor who said that the city was days away from running out of water in 2015. I'm not sure if that's something you've come across or how that could be, how someone could know that, I guess. I'm kind of curious how that would kind of come across to the mayor to be able to make that determination. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that generally that you could, or if you've never heard about that at all.
No, I'm not sure if Craig has looked at the data in detail, but presumably it would be a year when there was significant water restrictions applied, whether it got to stage 4 or such, where would be an outcry to the public to use less water during that time.
There would have been restrictions, quite severe restrictions put in place at that time.
Yeah.
It was prior to the water treatment plant, but after the dam had gone in.
Right.
So like around 2015, I think, somewhere around there.
Yeah, but we can certainly look into that time frame in more detail.
Yeah, I was just looking at your chart, and I mean, it's not one of the lowest dam level years, if I have the right year, but yeah. Okay, a couple more questions, and if I may, yeah. I wonder if you can touch a little bit on when you do your numbers around water usage. And we've definitely seen a huge spike certain months when there's a lot more outdoor watering and irrigation, all that. But how are you able to isolate where that water is being used? For example, we have a high season, low season tourism wise here. So there'd be a lot more people in town certain times of year. We also have maybe a bit of a snowbird population as well. So people come back to live here during maybe certain months, and other times they're somewhere else. So I'm wondering how you're able to isolate those, because I see the helpful charts here around sort of, wow, leaving the sprinkler on overnight for 10 days is the same as one person's entire year of water use. So I wonder if you can maybe speak a little bit about how you come to those numbers.
Sure. Yeah. The water use through that summertime period is broken out into as we've presented there, the domestic use and the seasonal water use is what we look at. The records we've been provided are for the actual customer use is quarterly water meter data. So it's quite coarse, but you can aggregate that summer period as best we can. And then we supplement that with the water treatment plant and the well supply data, which is much more frequent. I forget the data we have, but it's at least daily, probably more so. So through that information, we can look at what that peak is, and that's where we get the graph with the highs and lows through the summer period. And we can extract the more consistent indoor domestic use, and then the remainder is that outdoor, primarily irrigation component. And furthermore, there is meters. The city has some meters on some of the parks and irrigation supply use, so we can look at those numbers as well, and sort of take take those in comparison with what other jurisdictions are doing and put some commentary around that. So that's essentially how we break it out, if that answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go. Sean, you go ahead, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. And thanks very much for all the work you put into it so far. I think I have 3 questions altogether, so you can stop me whenever you want, Chair. The first question is kind of building on your question about other water licenses. Going back to page 12 of your presentation, we know what the city kind of processes for water supply for the community, but I'm assuming that you're just using the license number itself on the documentation from the province for those licensees. It's not necessarily reflective of the actual, straws in the river. And it sounds like it's self-reporting really in some instances as to how much those water licenses are being used. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that the province doesn't really monitor that. And when the province does monitor those licenses, how does the province do that? And do you guys know? Thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, I'm not aware of their process on that. Yeah, I just know sort of during those emergency conditions, when the flows in the river are very low, and this is based on the sort of Coxsila River example that they do monitor closer in terms of just so that because in terms of the water licensing system in British Columbia, it's first in line, first in right, and so it's the date on the license that determines when the river gets low. The earlier licenses have right over the later licenses, so they need to kind of balance that out. That's in law and in theory. Of course, they're trying to balance it off as best they can between all the license holders. So they need to kind of know how much each is using to be able to determine that. But so I know that during those periods, it is monitored, but in general, my understanding is no, it's not.
Okay. Thank you. And a second question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Building on Councillor Frez's questions about, say, Hidden Lake or Fishtail Lake. I obviously not a hydrologist or any sort of engineer, but it sounds like when you're thinking of building a dam, you have to consider the shape of the concrete and what you're going to build. So height is expensive, whereas if you're dealing with a flat lake, then you can kind of save on that dam construction cost because it doesn't have to go as high in a V shape. Then the other thing we have to consider is how fast that lake or area recharges by how much of the watershed is flowing into that. So those are the few, if I was listening, it sounds like there's a few considerations for that storage.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's the main criteria to consider with the storage is that relationship between the height of the dam, the height that the dam needs to be and the amount of storage that contained behind it. And then what is the watershed area upstream of that point that can fill up that storage? So those are the kind of the 2 key pieces of information in selecting a
Sure. I do have a third question, but you can go to someone else.
You're rolling. Go.
I'm rolling. All right. That's great. Thank you. Smart meters. You've mentioned smart meters in the report. In municipalities where there have been smart meters rolled out, what were, I guess, the public perception, pros and cons, maybe costs per household? Any other information for us with regards to smart meters? Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of jurisdictions where they have been rolled out, and I think I don't have exact figures on hand, but there is generally there's a reduction in use. Some numbers that we're looking at for the Comox Valley Regional District, for instance, in comparison. In future, we're looking at various scenarios there, whether they implement meters, and not the regional district, but the cities. If the cities were to implement them, there would be a reduction in future water use. It's on the order of sort of 10 to 20%, but it does vary depending on the community and of course the meter type and whether they're universally applied. And there's definitely a cost consideration, of course, as the units themselves is a high capital cost, and then obviously the operational needs to service that and collect that data and update your billing system and the like. So there are definitely costs associated with it.
Sure, thank you. It starts to make sense to me. I mean, we measure, say, gas to a house or we measure electricity to a house, but we don't really measure water to any accuracy. And at the regional district, we've had to deal with, say, a water leak, and I've had a water leak myself at my house, and you don't hear about it until it's too late. Whereas with a smart meter, you'd hear about it in a much more timely fashion. You'd be able to deal with it, and that results obviously in less water waste. So thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for your report.
Thank you. And Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to the delegation. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd just like to comment that I particularly appreciated with your information about some other possible sources, should that be needed in order to provide adequate water for fish and for people for drinking, that you've included a number of comparisons and also a sense of the advantages and disadvantages of each of them, including, you know, relative costs. I mean, not broken down, obviously, but I imagine it would cost more, for instance, to build a 10-meter high dam than a 4.5-meter dam. That challenges, I'm sure. It might be fun for an engineer, I don't know. But having had a look at some of the earlier studies that I did come across, you know, there was mention then as well of Healy Lake and Shelton and Healy, but there wasn't that kind of breakdown as to, you know, how that would work. You could see how it could fit in topographically, but I didn't come across other examples. So I always appreciate having some comparative information to go on. So I really appreciate that. And I really look forward to the next phase in the fall, including possible recommendations that we can look at, because when and if it's decided that we do need to plan for something in the future, these sorts of projects can take decades. So, you know, there's really no time to waste to get a really thorough current measure of where we're at and where we're likely to be decades from now. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just do mine and then back to you, Councillor Kerr. What also, I'm not sure I had any recollection in the presentation here regarding the ERWS system of our water supply. It has some issues and difficulties, of course, with the clay silt and so forth by running by the clay banks in the Englishman River. And it's problematic to our team at the water plant. I mean, they're coping very well, but it's a lot of extra maintenance and changing those filters and then getting rid of the sludge and so forth. It's become problematic. So I'm just wondering if part of your consultation or your recommendations will include anything to maybe alleviate that, to get more of a, like, are we looking at changing the intake location? Because reality is it's going to get worse before it gets better as the water continues with its flood flows. And that's when it starts tearing at that clay bank that is impacting our water treatment. So I'm just, if there's considerations of that, like to create a system that creates more pure flow, less silty flow and so forth, turbid and something like that, that's going to prevent the times like we have times where we literally don't turn on the system on the ARWS. We pull from the wells instead because it's just too turbid and there's way too much silt in the water and nothing can touch that. And the fact that the flood waters are coming down at that particular time, that's an awful lot of water. So, you know, like before it hit those clay banks, it'd be awfully nice if we could collect it. And we talked about side stream diversion as well. I just see all that water coming down. And I think, wow, it would be so great if somehow we could collect that and store it before it gets to the ERWS plant and slams into the plant with all the clay. So it'd be like, you know, something closer to the ERWS and then maybe a direct line, anyways, like a hard pipeline instead of using the Englishman River as a conduit. If we could do something like that, because as I say, the plant itself continues to suffer from this. And I know our team does their best, but it's yeah, it's a fact of life. And maybe, and the other question I had is like, Canada's pretty big, and I know your compatriots all across Canada have probably similar systems to what we have, and so it's a question of like, are we even going in the wrong direction? Should we be punching other wells? Really, are our aquifers satisfactory enough? If we just punch wells, it's going to solve an awful lot, and it's going to like give us more wells, possibly. Is that being considered as part of your recommendations as to choices that we may be able to do?
Yeah, and so for the clay bank, that's again, that we're just sort of at that initial stage. So it's something to consider. And for the groundwater, yes, we're definitely looking at groundwater as source, as an additional source. Firstly, looking at maximizing the current capacity of the wells, the licensed capacity, and then what opportunities are there for looking at additional capacity from groundwater, and what's going to be required to confirm that? It would be yeah.
It's not an easy question.
Yeah.
I recognize it. Yeah. Okay, thank you. You're aware of it. Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I just need some clarification on perhaps the scope of this study, if you may provide that. As you know, we have multiple jurisdictions within the watershed. We also have multiple water purveyors. And like you mentioned, a lot of privately owned land with Mosaic owning a lot of the watershed. I was wondering if like watershed governance is somehow a part of the recommendations that might come out of this study. Others, perhaps some provisions for environmental protections that we could utilize when we update our OCP. Any sensitive ecosystems inventory. I know we talked about the impervious surfaces and some of those recommendations, I guess, if those would be included in the study. Thanks.
Yeah, at this point, the study is focused on the Englishman River water system for the city of Parksville, as well as the Nanoose area services. So that really is the limit of the scope at this point. But anything to add to that?
Yeah. In terms of from the watershed perspective, like similar to what Steve just said, it's like our main focus is sort of within sort of the purview of the city, is what sort of the current study is focused on. But we can and will include some sort of blue sky statements around that those types of initiatives could be considered.
Great, thank you. Councillor Martin, and we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a big subject, obviously, all of us are very concerned. This Councillor Wood mentioned about a smart meter. I had a situation, I live in a strata, and we wanted to get those smart meters, and there was so much money. I mean, I would have done it for myself, but people wouldn't do it. So is there a way to I had a situation in my house in Victoria where we had put a little river in, which I'll never do again because of what I know about water now, evaporation and the whole works. Anyway, we had a leak in there, which we did not know. And they billed us only every three times a year for our water. And we got a bill for $900. And that kind of, this is many years ago, the red flag went up. So we found out that we had a leak in the little river that we were doing, just like Councillor Wood said, and you have to be so careful. So I think, the meters to me are an answer, but I don't know, would it have to be in an ROCP to get something like that done, Mr. Mayor? Or Kiva, or CEO, how would we do that? Is that, I don't know, do many communities have them, or is it just out of the question? Meters. Yeah.
Yeah, CAO Taylor, the question is basically, as the City of Parksville Water Department, have we looked at the options of converting to smart meters?
If I may, I'd have to double check with them on the smart meters, but we do have a meter program. And I think we've discussed, the CFO has discussed with council during budget, looking at the rates and looking at different things around how we charge for water. And we were waiting, if council recalls, Jetta mentioned during the budget process, we were waiting until the results of the study before doing anything dramatic, just around bylaws and conservation and metering, all those things that have a cost. So I would imagine that'll be coming up once we get the
Okay.
results from the experts here.
Thank you for that, CAO Taylor.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and as I recall, that's exactly what we're doing. We're waiting for this comprehensive study to come through with recommendations. We can look at it. There are some municipalities and so forth that don't have any meters. We at least have meters. They're touch reads, but we do have meters. So that's a good thing. I think that's it. Gentlemen, thank you very much for it's an engaging subject, so you really got our attention on this one. So thank you so much. I appreciate what you're doing. You're on the right track. That's all I can say. You really are. You've got a big job ahead. You've got a lot of the data here, but you're actually on the right track for exactly what we want, and our community is requesting this anyway. So we have to be responsible for this, and so thank you. We're in good hands. Thank you for your report. Council, we have first report on the agendas from the Director of Community Planning and Building regarding a development permit application at B266 Moilliet Street South to consider a development permit. We have no verbal report at this time, do we, from Director of Planning? Good. As the recommendations are in your report, got a move and a second for the recommendations as noted. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any discussion? Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a mention. I want to thank our Director of Planning. I really loved reading your report, especially with the variances, why that's being requested, and perhaps if we deny the variance, why it couldn't impact the whole plan. I was really pleased, and when it comes to variances, I'm a bit hesitant to approve, but with this one, they're requesting this variance to build this outdoor pavilion for the residents and the staff to enjoy. So I really like that. Working in healthcare with seniors, I think it's going to add to the quality of life to the people at Aerosmith Lodge and the Coakley Manor. But speaking of the variance, I was quite pleased that this is being requested actually to mitigate any possible noises that could go impact the neighbors. And quite more importantly to me as well, and a lot of residents in Parksville, I think it's also to kind of preserve those mature trees. Otherwise, they might have to encroach upon and take down some of those beautiful mature trees. So I appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Then we have the next report on the agendas from the Director of Community Planning and Building regarding a development permit application at 1122 Herring Gull Way to consider issuance of a development permit. Do I have a mover and second for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Wood, second by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you. Now, this application, I wasn't quite as pleased to be honest, looking at what's being requested. I know, especially talking about the protected trees, we are looking at about 31 of the 33 protected trees being taken out. And it does fall under the groundwater DPA. And a bit surprised that it does not have the Douglas fir terrestrial DPA 15 applied to this site. A question to our staff is, when a protected tree is being taken out for a DP like this, is there a provision for them to plant replacement trees? Because that's what is required in our tree bylaw.
Mr. Russell, if you could answer the question, please.
If I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Gore. So what's being proposed with respect to landscaping and trees is per the landscape plan that are attached to the permit.
And CEO Kaler, further comment, please.
Thank you. If I may, through you to Councillor Gore and to council. One thing that I think maybe needs to be mentioned here as well is that a tree protection bylaw is subject to certain limits under legislation. And so a city is not permitted to preclude the permitted use from occurring by saying you can't remove the trees. So our tree protection bylaw cannot be as restrictive to such a way that it would limit the industrial use of the property or the residential use of the property or whatever the zone permits. So there's a bit of a temper on the power that a tree protection bylaw has. And in this particular situation, it is in the industrial area. And so the intended use is industrial. And so I think there's limited options in some situations if you're going to use the property to the fullest permitted use, highest best use, or whatever the assessment terms are, to maintain all of the existing trees. However, the landscape plan will require them to replant with the landscape standards that are in the development permit area. So the tree removal bylaw is kind of secondary, and the development permit area is really what's the guidelines that the person has to meet. And then, yes, we're not allowed to use that to say that they have to retain trees so that the industrial use couldn't be met to the full coverage of the zone.
Right. And so this is privately owned land within the industrial area of our city, within the urban containment boundary. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. No, I totally understand that, Mayor. Thank you. The private land ownership and the full extent of the land to be allowed to use. But to me, I think it's also crucial what we're talking about is the critical shared resource that sits under that privately owned land, the aquifer. And we know the importance the trees play in the overall health of the aquifer, your and my drinking water we're talking about. Yes, there were mistakes in the past to have our industrial park sit right on the aquifer. I personally would have liked to see much more effort being made to protect those trees, to have some rain capture on site. And this DP is, to me, it looks like a total clear-cut permission, and we will build in the future what may become available. So I cannot support the DP as being requested at this time, because I do think there's some very detrimental effect, and this will have not just on the forest, but also on our aquifer. And this is where I think, personally, when we do our OCP review, our DPAs need to be strengthened and need to be brought more up to date. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to comment maybe through to you to council, building on something Councillor Gore is mentioning there. I fully recognize and understand the challenges and the need to, everyone in the community, and I think at this table, wants to retain as many trees as possible. And unfortunately, for this particular thing, it's one thing that's come to us that is not, as much as I guess like to vote against it, I don't really feel like I can, because it's comes down to a policy issue that is outside of the scope of what we're voting on here. So I'm going to support it because I should allow for them to get the best use that they can under their current policies. And maybe in the future, to Councillor Gore's comments, we look at those policies. It is a shame that the circumstances around which these trees will have to come down, but that is the policies that we're sitting at the table with right now. So I will support it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with both our councillors, my fellow councillors. I also know that private land is private land. Even I lived in an area at one time where you could not grow a hedge to block someone's view. And so there was a bylaw for that, because that view would probably be worth $100,000 if you're growing a hedge up to block the view, but you could not take the trees down. But the view was not allowed to be grown with a hedge. So I think with our official community plan, we're going to go over this. There's a concern about trees, water, all these things. We can discuss that. I think it's worthwhile to have it on the list, personally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other first-time speakers for this? Councillor Gore, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I do respect the comments that are being made about the private land ownership, the current policies. But I think this one will perhaps, a voting no would judge the kind of nudge the applicant here to do better with the current policies in place. Like the previous one, I'm happy to support a variance. Like I would be happy to consider a variance if there's an effort being made within the current policy framework to see the criticality of this, of protecting this endangered ecosystem we're talking about, the coastal Douglas fir, and also our groundwater. So within the current policies, just a nudge to the applicant. If they can do better, I would be happy to support a variance.
Thank you. All those in favor? Right. Any of those opposed? Note that Councillor Gore is opposed. Thank you. That carries. The next report on the agenda is from the Manager of Finance for the 2024 Statement of Finance Information, what we affectionately known as SOFI, for the public reporting of the financial information in accordance with the Financial Information Act and associated regulations. It's all in our package, Council. You all seen it. I got a mover seconder for the third recommendation. It's just third on mine, but I don't think it's third. It's just for the recommendation. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but there's, mine says third. Okay. Do I have a mover or seconder for recommendation number 1 and 2? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. The next report on the agenda is from the corporate officer regarding the lease agreement for 625 Pym Street. Lease agreement for the residential caretaker dwelling on Foster Park at 625 Pym Street. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. The next report on the agenda is from the Manager of Administrative Services regarding the bylaw amendments to prevent miscellaneous, what we call them, housekeeping bylaw amendments to the council considerations as per your package. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the 1 and 2 recommendations as noted? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any discussion? Councillor Grens, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question through to staff. I noticed that the report does use some, or the bylaw does use some gendered language. Is the city looking to move away from that and use more sort of generic language?
CAO Kaler, I will address the question to you, please.
Thank you. We certainly could, with council direction, choose a different word, but the Interpretation Act in BC basically says that where he, she, they is used, it is gender neutral. So that's provincial legislation that kind of overrides that. So again, we can if council gives us direction, but we do have that as a higher kind of level of legislation already in place.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, I do know that some communities are kind of changing that up just to make it more inclusive of she as well. But it's, if there's that additional layer, then it's not worth doing a lot of work on, I don't think at this point, probably.
Thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do have a couple of questions for staff. One, first of all, if one wanted, is it fairly straightforward procedure to make an amendment to a bylaw at a later date, or is there only one time when a particular bylaw can come forward?
CAO Taylor or Ms. Weeks?
So thank you. If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, we can amend a bylaw at any time council wishes. Usually what happens for our bylaw reviews is we tend to review them when they become problematic or a piece of legislation changes. just for capacity reasons. So we make a list of enforcement challenges or situational challenges. And then when we have a critical threshold, we will bring that bylaw usually and review it. The bylaw offense notice bylaw gets amended regularly because anytime you change a bylaw, you have to change the fine provisions. And sometimes our fees and charges bylaw gets reviewed and changed very regularly, but it's usually kind of every couple of years for the other bylaws, unless we get council direction, at which time we can amend any bylaw anytime. There's just sometimes different processes for doing that. So sometimes you have more notice you have to give, or the readings are different depending on the type of bylaw, but really it is council's discretion to tell us to pull one forward. But for our own review, we tend to do it on a bit of a yearly schedule.
Follow-up, Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so I do have some questions about item H and I in the table. Item H has addition of 2 new exemptions from noise bylaw, heating and cooling systems, noise from property zoned for commercial or industrial use. I have a question about this because as I read this, it would seem that there could be the potential of no limits at all for these devices or in particular areas. Can you clarify that particular item?
I'll put this back to Ms. Weeks, if you could speak further to it, if you may, please.
Yes, of course. So are you speaking about like the commercial zone? Like commercial properties and under the exemptions?
Yes, it's in the summary of changes. And it does say in the rationale that it's a new addition to bylaw.
Yeah, so we do have the decibel meters for the heating and cooling systems. And then for the other thing we just clarified was property zoned for commercial or industrial use. So it's not that they get a full exemption for noise. It's just more recognizing the fact that they are zoned differently and they may have different expectations, being like they're not residential properties. Commercial properties would have more deliveries, restaurants or pubs would have more music, etc. So it wouldn't be a complete exemption. It's just kind of maintaining expectations of this zone differently. Does that make sense?
Go ahead. Follow up, Councillor.
Thank you. Somewhat, I have some concerns about that, but also I have a question about item I, amend clause regarding written approval where it is impractical or impossible to comply with noise regulations. And I just don't understand what that means or what that refers to.
Yes, so that's already in the bylaw. The only change that we had is that the CAO could designate responsibility to another staff member. So that's in a case where a construction company is pouring pavement and they need to do it over the allotted time because they're in a certain weather window. And then the CAO currently has the ability to kind of give an exemption for them to allow them to pour later or earlier, but they do have to give notice to, we ask that they give notice to surrounding residents and try and keep noise to a minimal and the backup beepers noising to a minimal, et cetera.
Are you good? Another one? Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your indulgence on this. So I really appreciate the explanation for item I, and I understand that now. Thank you. I'm still quite concerned about the way that reads to have the addition of 2 new exemptions from the bylaw, the noise bylaw. And where I'm coming from is that it seems to me that then this would open the door for situations where perhaps a heating or cooling system is truly excessive. They have come a long way, or people or businesses can do baffle systems or construct something to reduce the noise. I mean, at what point, is it reasonable for residents nearby to suffer if it is in fact beyond what would be a reasonable expectation in a setting. And we're going to have, I know that at some point it says all of this should improve livability in the downtown area, but I worry that exempting this could also create additional challenges for people in the downtown area. I'm very concerned that what I would like to see in Parksville is that no matter what neighborhood you live in, with some reasonable tolerances, obviously, if you live next to the highway and elsewhere, but that one should have a reasonable standard of livability, which would include freedom from excessive noise or noise at times of the night when people really should be able to sleep. So what protection would there be for individuals if there's an exemption for all heating and cooling? And if there's some further refinement that could be made, then I would be happy to make an amendment to remove that at this time so that some further work could be done on this.
Go ahead, CEO Kaler.
Okay, thank you. I think I might be addressing your question, but if I'm not, you can let me know. So if council looks on page 113 of the agenda, the draft amendment bylaw is attached. And for the heating and cooling, there is a decibel amount. And so that is based on research across many municipalities around what is an acceptable level of noise at night when things are quieter around and during the daytime. For the zoning requirement, the example that we've been dealing with, or some of the examples, one of them was an ice making machine in the industrial area. And that was making noise because it makes noise to make ice, I guess. And so we had a complaint around the noise, but it was considered a reasonable activity in that particular zone. Similarly, if we have restaurants or pubs or other commercial activities like was mentioned around deliveries, if the zones permits that, then that is not necessarily a noise infraction. We do have other overlapping bylaws, nuisance abatement bylaws. We have business license requirements as well, where folks might have hours of operation depending on the type of business. But what we were finding is that there may be unreasonable complaints against a patron or like against a building operator that would be normal noise associated with that. Drive-throughs, for example, or gas stations where they have to make that amount of noise for their business. So that's what that's attempting to address, is where the zone allows a certain activity and you would expect a certain activity, whether it be commercial or industrial. There shouldn't be the person shouldn't be I don't know what the word would be, but like attacked, I guess, for doing that normal business, similar to kind of like normal farm practices, right? Like when you're a farmer, you're allowed to make a certain amount of noise and you're protected, but you can't be unreasonable or vexatious around the noise. And so there's probably other parts of like the nuisance bylaw would be one example where we may be able to address some of it. But it really is just an impossible thing for a bylaw officer to prevent. And a neighbor hopefully would be aware of the zone when they move into an area. So if you live right next door to an industrial area or in an industrial area or right next door to the Rod and Gun, there's going to be noise, and that they're allowed to make a certain level of noise because the zone permits it. So that's what we're trying to deal with here.
Okay, Councillor Fraz.
Yeah, thank you. Send a question through the mayor to Councillor Grenz. Just in your comment there about the gendered language in the bylaw, wondering where you see that.
If I may, there's a, I don't know what, I was trying to find what page it was on, but there was a he in there. My control F is not getting it quicker enough. There are 1,365 he's in my control F search. Yeah, it's in there for sure. I don't remember what page number it was on.
Though too, because I see in here the part of the things that are being changed is deleting the definitions where it's, mentioning here director of engineering and speaking as the director to act on his behalf. So I'm just I'm just seeing in here that there's things like that are being removed from it. And I wasn't sure if they're just in reading through, if you're seeing that and if there's other parts that I'm missing where it's being kept, but it looks to me like that's the things that some of it's being removed out of the bylaw.
Yeah, I mean, the bylaws do have currently also just generally gendered language here and there, but yeah, it's I'm not sure how much time and effort we want to put into that as a priority, but it's something I guess worth noting. Yeah.
You good? Okay, thank you. Councillor Gore.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, up to our staff, I guess, and to council. I want to thank Councillor Beal. I think I really like your line of thinking here when it comes to noise and in the residential areas. Since we are seeing more and more of comprehensive developments that are being approved, mixed use is the new trend. So we want to make sure like those mixed uses are also livable and compatible. So with the noise, I know we talked about just the heat pump, but also the deliveries that we spoke of, and also I think the commercial. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the commercial properties have a different garbage collection times as well. They can do it earlier in the morning than the residentials can. Because I live close to one, so I know at 6 in the morning, get woken up by those. So perhaps it's time that we look at these nuisance bylaws or the noise bylaws also at a lens of that, yes, the comprehensive developments will have commercial as well as residential, like in the same building. So we don't want to impact the livability and quality of life of those residents as well. So I don't know if council is proposing that we come back. Are we voting it now, or are we revising it, keeping those things in mind? I would definitely like to see those considerations being made. Thank you.
I would suggest at this particular point is that we as the CAO has mentioned, that we can amend our bylaws as well. I think this is not the time at this table. I think if it would be worthwhile for yourselves to come and meet with our staff anyways, CAO Kaler and Ms. Weeks as well as our bylaw compliance anyways, to propose what you're doing, what you're suggesting, and then they can give you a educated answer from the point of view of implementation. So I think this is not the time to make those exemptions right now or additions to it. An awful lot of work has gone into getting to the stage right here with everything else here. So I think that we have to defer to the fact that we have experts that brought these up that are based on other bylaws, noise bylaws from other municipalities that they've researched. You know what I'm saying? Do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you, Mayor, just because we are doing the process now, we're doing the 3 readings, we're adopting it, then to have it amend, we are actually putting more work for staff. So if we were to defer and have a session with staff on some of those concerns, I think we can just iron out those differences, those questions, and then adopt at a later date. I don't see an urgency why it needs to be adopted like at this meeting, so.
There is an urgency because we have made commitments to certain individuals that what this has been going to be, the amendments that are here, that they would be brought. It's taken over 6 months, brought to the table type of thing, and they've been advised as long as the council would be seeing this. And so I'm really not prepared unless you wanted to just pull out one particular section. So. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just to advise what you would like to do, Councillor Beal. Oh, yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
I will briefly recount, though, that there was a time when there was an issue at a Starbucks cafe, and it was in the middle of the night or very, very early. And I actually took it upon myself to contact a manager, and it kind of went up the line, and the person said, "Oh, I'm really, really sorry. That really shouldn't have been taking place at that particular time." Another time when someone contacted me to say, there's this, anyway, followed it all up. It was Thrifty's. It was a delivery truck, and they had the, couldn't you turn off the backup light? Well, in fact, they adjusted it. I'm just concerned. I've had very positive experiences when people have asked me to follow through and find out if there's a solution. I'm concerned that if there's total exemption, that might not be that possibility. I would like to think that people are always wanting, and businesses want to be considerate of others, but it just doesn't always happen. So I would like to, yes, I would like to remove at this time the noise from property zoned for commercial or industrial use to give us time to look more closely at that. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be reasonable noise, but that's the amendment I would like to make, but I don't know what that's in the summary. So.
Okay, because CAO Keller, I know on page 114 of 130, it goes exactly to the exemptions, but it says that even with the exemptions, the heating and cooling systems are still subject to the decibel level.
Yes,
measurement.
that is correct. I was not asking
You're
for
not
it this
asking.
time. I mean, hopefully that will just take care of itself, but the
Okay.
commercial properties, yeah.
If, Mr. Mayor, I think if I may try to interpret what will be a motion, if you get a seconder, is that Councillor Beale is looking to just remove item HJ from page 114 from the amendment bylaw. The rest of the items in the amendment bylaw would stay the same. So we would move forward to amend the noise bylaw with all the other changes proposed, with the exception of J at the bottom of page 114. Is that correct?
So is that H and J or just H?
Just J, I
J.
believe.
Oh, just J.
Section H,
Okay.
subsection J.
Section
that
A,
correct?
subsection J. Okay, that's, yeah. Okay.
J reads noise, music, or sound emanating from properties zoned for commercial or industrial use, including but not limited to restaurants, pubs, and bars that are deemed reasonable by a bylaw compliance officer within the defined use of the property. So right now, that would give the bylaw officer the ability to say, is it reasonable for a delivery to be at 11 at night? He may or may, and we only have he's, they may or may not, but 2:30 in the morning, perhaps the delegated officer would say that's not reasonable. So it doesn't preclude a bylaw officer from issuing tickets for something they deem unreasonable, but we have had a few, well, quite a few complaints about noise that is really considered normal noise associated with that. And there's been some neighbor conflict there because our bylaw is currently silent. And it doesn't say when you own a pub, you're allowed to make all the normal noise of a pub, or when you own an industrial use, you're allowed to make noise. And so we thought it was, the reason why we brought it forward as an exemption was to stop the kind of neighbor conflict complaints
Weaponizing.
that are maybe not recognizing the legitimate use of the property. But if council wishes, we can just remove that one clause and the rest of the bylaw would proceed as amended through the readings today.
Would that be?
That is the amendment, and I do appreciate that it makes it more onerous for bylaw, and I do appreciate, I also want to say I really appreciate that things are being measured in decibels, and that's simplified too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that would be the amendment. Thank you.
makes sense. Okay, that's good. And you'll second that, Councillor Press? Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion to the amendment? Discussion or you're voting? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to boil this down, I think essentially we're voting on whether or not to give some discretion to the bylaw officer around whether to allow a certain noise to continue in the commercial zone. Yeah.
Yeah, commercial industrial, right? Yeah.
In which case, I guess I wonder what resolution there would be otherwise, is just for, I guess, a bylaw, maybe a question through to staff, like what would bylaw do then without having that ability to do that? Would they issue a ticket? Would they, what would they do if someone is using a restaurant as a restaurant and gets a noise complaint for doing what would be, I guess, normal and acceptable for a restaurant to do?
CEO Kaler?
Thank you.
What
If I
would that
may-
look, if we remove that, is it going to be replaced by something else?
So if I may, through you, essentially, we're doing that right now. We're not issuing tickets for what a bylaw officer deems is a non-offense. So we don't really, in a way, it's silent right now. So we don't really have a way to clarify what the expectation or the service level is to other members of the public. So we've had some situations, as I mentioned, the examples I've given, where a ticket was not issued because it was not deemed to be an offense. but we still sometimes have people wanting to punish their neighbor. So this just clarifies that it is really the practice of what has been happening is that when it's a permitted use and considered a reasonable, normal use, there hasn't been a noise violation. So if we don't have anything in the bylaw, we're back to that same practice, I would say, in that the bylaw officers have delegated authority to determine if something is an offense. If it was something like a heating system at an industrial area that was over the amount, like over the decibels past the time, that would be an offense. It's just for those kind of normal activities that we're currently deeming them not to be an offense. So it's clarifying that practice.
Councillor Wood.
Thanks, Mayor. To me, I don't think I'm going to support this amendment because it sounds like staff have essentially put in writing what our current operations are. So if there's a problem with our current operations, then we should be dealing with that. It sounds like this clause will help staff just put it in writing how we're currently dealing with things. So I haven't heard a good reason why I would support an amendment to change the way that city is currently dealing with noise complaints. Thanks.
Because as it reads now, if I'm correct, CAO, that is up to the decision of the bylaw compliance officer.
If I may, yes, that's basically what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Grant, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd hate to do analogies, but it's helping my thinking. Maybe it will help the discussion. The province made a decision not to enforce criminal penalties on minor drug possession. And even though it was already the practice of enforcement officers to not really use that law, in practice, it wasn't really used to arrest people. They would just take away the drugs. The law wasn't changed to say it's okay for officers to do that, what they're already doing. The law was changed to say that it took the discretion away from the officers to now that they can't take the drugs away and they can't. So I think that's this bylaw, I think to me right now, as it reads, strikes the balance of giving some discretion to the bylaw officer to decide whether or not they want to enforce the bylaw, because there are always gray areas in these things, and it allows them to be maybe a little bit more lenient, which if the case allows for that, but still can say that I'm going to enforce it end of the day. That's how I'm reading it.
And thank you for that. And I know that personal experience working with a bylaw compliance team, when I receive a complaint about the individual feels they've been unfairly treated, and then I have the opportunity to talk to the bylaw compliance officer that made the decision based on the information he had, then I totally appreciate the fact that that was the other side of the coin. The bylaw compliance officer looked at it in the full measure of what that circumstance is. This is a very broad one. So, but in that particular instance, the bylaw said, no, I don't need to, you're going to get a warning, or this is what it's going to be. He has that choice. And to me, that's where the choice should be made, not by us trying to cover every situation that could happen, because we'll never get there, right? And especially in this case. So I agree. I don't support the amended. Councillor Frass.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. On the other side of it, what it also did is meant people felt empowered to have more open drug use and carry more drugs, and you started to see it around on public transit even. And whereas before, when the officers had the discretion to it, people were more responsible with it. So I wouldn't want to see where them businesses go, well, everything I do to operate my business is reasonable under my eyes, and just cause, feel like they have a free chance to cause more of an issue for people or not be as concerned about it, because I can negotiate that then with a bylaw officer. So I don't know, I think there's two sides to it. I agree with the spirit of what Councillor Beal was bringing forward though too, is saying putting amendments in to have exemptions, or sorry, not amendments, but having exemptions on it right now is maybe we can start with the other portions of it too. Some of the things that we hear is like with heating and air conditioning is people having it outside their homes, and then people with their patios right beside there. not being able to enjoy their summer patios when people are coming out with their air conditioning. So the decibel level part of it, I think is fine, but that's why I support the amendment as far as removing the that discretionary point. Yeah.
Just CAO Kaler, if I can just go to the mechanics of this. If we remove this, will staff be conferring with bylaw and those counselors that are concerned about it, of what it could possibly look like? And could that be like if we pass everything else today, but we just pull H, J out of this type of thing, could it come back relatively easily without, you know, like impacting capacity?
Yes, if I may, it could for sure. Yeah, we can proceed with the other items. And if members of council want to come and chat about the rationale or the specifics, which we probably don't want to get into in an open meeting, we can certainly do that, and everything else will proceed as is with just that amendment.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that is precisely my hope. I had come in on another day hoping to talk a bit more about this, but unfortunately at that time, no one was available. So I would like to pull this aside so that there can be a little bit more in-depth look at it and see if there's some refinements that can be made that would assist bylaw, but also allow access. Anyway, a more fulsome look at what we could do.
Yeah. That seems to me to be a fair solution. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Good discussion. All those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? That is opposed by Councillor Wood. Thank you. Okay, now back to the original motion for giving second and third reading for items 1 and 2. For the amended motion, yes. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. The next report on the agenda is from the CAO regarding the 2024 annual municipal report. The community charter requires municipalities to prepare an annual report regarding financial and operational progress in relation to objectives and measures established for that year. The 2024 annual report has been prepared and made available for public inspection. Council, you've had that report in your package. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? The council endorse the annual report for the year ended December 31. Annual report. It's the annual report. No, we have an annual report. The annual report has already gone out. Yes.
If I may, the annual report is linked. It's a very large document, and so it is linked in the agenda.
Yes, the annual report is already out. It wasn't, you don't want a verbal report on this. We'll be here for 3 days. Not that we don't like hearing the CAO's voice, but seriously, yeah. So that was in your package, and I've already seen the whole thing, and it's huge. So got a mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Grant. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. Okay, so under bylaws, 3 readings for the noise control amendment bylaw number 202. Let's start again. The noise control amendment bylaw 2025, number 1432.1. Housekeeping amendments, addition of decibel levels, addition of for heating and cooling. Yeah, this is not, so this is actually calling for the heating and cooling section.
So if I may, we're going to read this one as amended.
Yeah.
And that will reflect the
this,
change.
So we're going to third reading. So we'll just do it as we did the other one,
Yes.
and we'll just do it as the amended motion.
Exactly. And the
Okay.
rest of them are just going to be on the agenda.
That's
because
right.
Those were not amended.
Yeah. Council, are you okay with that? Does that make sense? Okay. Can I have a mover seconder for that, please? Councillor Gren's moved and seconded by Councillor Gore. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. So we have three readings for the City of Parksville sign regulation amendment bylaw 2025, number 1511.2. Mover seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Krenz, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? It's waiting for someone to start singing signs everywhere sign. Okay, we'll leave that on the table. Thank you for that. All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Now we have bylaw for three readings for the business license amendment bylaw 2025, number 1550.2. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. For final adoption bylaw, we have Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1492.9, regarding the text amendment to shopping center commercial at 810, 814, 818, 822, 826, 830, and 834 Island Highway West. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'll speak to both now, so I don't have to speak again, to the OCP amendment and the rezoning bylaw that's following this.
Okay, go ahead.
I understand this is the final adoption. I'm just gonna say the same thing I've said previously. I'm hoping council would consider the request that we've heard from the public. I know we'll probably support the OCP amendment here, but to the rezoning section, if a councillor is willing, we could defer it till we get that report on the traffic management part. And look at how we just spoke about the livability. I think it's going to be very important for the people in the neighborhood that traffic is managed in a way where they can keep enjoying the lifestyles that they have, even for the future residents. We heard about the safety of kids going to the school at Oceanside Elementary. The cyclists, we've heard quite a bit. So, and I do understand the applicant, he's been working on this file for a while. So kind of save them the time rather than voting it down and having to start again. If we defer it, the rezoning part and have a traffic management plan for Wembley, as well as along the Wembley and the church corridor. So I would appreciate that, and I think the community would appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And all those opposed? That is opposed by Councillor Wood and Councillor Gore. Thank you. That passes. Final adoption for the zoning and development amendment bylaw 2025, number 2000.152. Text amendment to the comprehensive development CD 12 at 810, 814, 818, 822, 826, 830, and 834 Island Highway West. Do I have a mover or second for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Grants. Any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That is opposed by Councillor Gore, Councillor Fraz, Councillor Wood. Thank you. That passes. Any notices of motion at this time, Council? I will move now to liaison reports. And in the interest of efficiency, I would ask you if you could keep your updates concise. Thank you, Council. We'll start with Councillor Grenz and Wood. Is this going to be a team effort here? Are you going to a duet? I like it. You bring a guitar? Go ahead. I'm looking forward to it.
Me.
Councillor
No.
Grenz, take the lead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm looking at you.
I was just warming up my vocal cords there
Oh,
for a
that's
duet.
nice.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. There is a report attached to the agenda from our visit to FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention in Ottawa. I'm just going to do a quick summary and then folks can read the report. The bottom line is that this I found to be very valuable experience for us to collaborate with fellow municipal councillors and mayors from across the country and get together, especially in Ottawa with the new government there, to be able to bring our voices forward in one unified manner because we share a lot of the same challenges across Canada in municipalities. One highlight of the convention was the president of FCM did a fireside chat with our new prime minister. And in that conversation, she raised the fact that the current framework that we're working within as municipalities comes from the horse and buggy era, horse and cart era, as she said, and that it's time for an updated framework on how we fund what we do here at the local level. Increasingly, there's more and more expenses that we have to bear at the local government level that are paid for from property taxes. And so it's time to work a new framework out that will allow for us to provide the infrastructure, costly things that are involved in local government responsibilities, but being able to fund those in a more equitable manner. And so that was one of the key discussions throughout the convention. And I think maybe I'll pass the baton over to Councillor Wood.
Councillor Wood, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I guess it's not a duet, and now we're in a relay race. Since it's a federal convention, I wanted to spend time with our local MP, Gord Johns, who's the last remaining federal NDP representative for Vancouver Island. We all probably know him. I know him relatively well from running against him back in 2019 and working with him on the firefighter volunteer tax credit. But I also spent some time with Tamara Cronus, who is a federal conservative for Nanaimo Ladysmith, just south of us. And I have found that building those relationships are really helpful when it comes time, say for federal contributions to infrastructure, letting them know our needs. And so I spent quite a bit of time getting to know Tamara Cronus because I had never spoken to her before our trip to Ottawa. And I made specific mention of the NRGH needs that we are advocating for at the hospital district. And she's well aware of that. She's actually one of the Conservative MPs who attended the all candidates meetings. Many did not, but she did, and very impressed with her. And so that's how I tried to be as productive as possible, is kind of spend some time with both Gord and Tamara and build some relationships there, because I found in the past that can be really beneficial to City of Parksville. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. And I can say, since I was unable to attend the FCM conference this time, I was able to avail myself of watching from the FCM website. It actually had the fireside chat with our Prime Minister, Carney, and it was intriguing. It was very well done. Our president of the FCM did a fine job as well, but I was very impressed with the reaction from the Prime Minister as well. It was a well done question and answer that it was very worthwhile to see. So that's on the FCM website if anybody wants to look that up. There's that and very other ones as well. Gord Johns was there as well. It's also available to view. So thank you very much for your attendance and dedication to the community of Parksville. The next on the agenda is we have Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The PDBA, as you probably can tell, are a very active group. And on June 8th, they had this truck festival, Forks and Tunes Food Festival. And it was really successful. They had 4,000 plus turnout. There was 18 trucks there. And from what I heard, there wasn't any challenges afterwards cleaning up. I haven't heard a thing. I asked specifically because of, all the things that can happen with all that number of people. And so they're very grateful and their event turned out well. And that's really good for them. And for us, because it's in our community and it's a reflection on us for sure. Starting on the 20th of this month, on Fridays, there will be food truck night on Memorial. And so every Friday night you can go down there, and I haven't got the times, but it's probably from 4 to 8 or something like that. But it'll be food truck night, and you can find out the times on the website. The plaza. And that's it. I got a concise report from Teresa, their executive director. She's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. We have Councillor Beal come next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I go through my liaison reports, I would like to thank Councillor Grenz and Councillor Wood for sharing out about the FCM. I appreciated that. I will say, however, I was a little surprised at the bottom to see a link through to what seemed to be, personal thoughts about whether it be the FCM or going on to other things. And I was under the impression, and perhaps staff could fill me in a little bit more, that the role of liaison reports and whether or not they form part of the official record for agendas and for minutes. Is there any particular direction or requirement there?
Councillor again. CAO Kaler.
My apologies. I don't really understand the question. You're asking questions about Councillor Grenz and Wood's presentation?
I was just wondering, I was under the impression that liaison reports don't necessarily form part of the official record of our meetings, that they're, a reporting out to all of us here and certainly people who are listening. So I just wasn't sure about that, how that works.
Okay.
Are you suggesting, Councillor Beal, that the Councillor Wood and Grenz should have been in new business instead of under liaison reports?
Oh, maybe this is too involved. I will say I appreciated the little written report. I was somewhat surprised at the link at the bottom, perhaps a link to FCM, but especially that then there's a subscription to something. Like I just wasn't sure how that fit with general council business, and I wasn't sure how that fit, if it did.
Thank you. I think I understand what you mean. So normally what happens under this is a new section that this council added in to kind of provide a more frequent schedule for reporting out on liaisons. And I think it also allowed the liaison and interested people for a particular group to know when something was coming ahead. So we usually rely on the individual councillors to let us know if they want something on the agenda. And so Sarah typically reaches out by the deadline to ask whether somebody wants to add something, have it distributed, or just do a verbal. And so we really defer to council members on this section.
Councillor Frass, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point was just that having a personal plug at the end of a report there about like check out our podcast, and apparently it comes with a subscription or something in there. And I didn't see the podcast, but I think that was the comment, just about having your own personal plug at the end of a report.
I missed it. I guess I saw podcasts. I probably ran.
Oh, there's
Okay.
more than one. There's more than one, and a bit of a plug. It surprised me.
Okay,
It's quite humorous and overall harmless, but I wasn't 100% comfortable with
Okay,
that.
well,
But
okay.
if I can
So
bring
noted.
my device back up, I do have a couple of liaison reports. First of all, from the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, I did attend a couple of meetings since we last met. And people may know that the executive director of VRL has moved now to the Vancouver Public Library. And but the vacancy will be filled by 2 interim positions from within the VIRL senior leadership team. And this will ensure continuity with the strategic plan and also with operations. So they're well in hand. It's a very strong leadership team that's done a tremendous work over the past 4 years, getting the library back on track to address some issues that developed prior to that. Also, with the Early Learning and Childcare Council of Oceanside, ELCO, as it's also known, they have received funding from SPARK. I forget the acronym, what it stands for exactly, but and with that, they were able to commission 3 reports to guide their actions. And the first was on childcare recruitment and retention. which is a response to staffing challenges. And so that sector has staffing challenges like so many sectors. And the second is a report on the state of childcare sector. And the third provides recommendations and a planning document. And all three are available on their website, elco.ca, and their projects. So they're setting up a meeting with childcare providers in the near future before taking further steps. And subsequent to that, I'm hoping that they may have a delegation to share what they've learned. It really is quite impressive, the reports that have been put together. With the Chamber of Commerce, I met with the new executive director, Liette Massey, and I also attended the opening Summer by the Sea Tuesday evening market, which was well attended. And I put a shout out there. The Chamber invites local nonprofit organizations to contact them about a free spot at the market. They have 3 such spots available each week. So that's really cool. I have in fact gotten in touch with a couple of nonprofit organizations already about that, but I thought I'd share that here for any that people are connected with. With the biosphere, Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region, I recently attended the Biosphere Region's roundtable on behalf of Councillor Martin, who happened to be away. And our local biosphere region received really big news, and that is that they're following a very intensive review conducted by UNESCO, and they have very strict criteria to enable a region to be listed as one of the official biospheres. And Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region has retained its status, and furthermore, it's good for 10 years without review, which is really impressive. Now, that will give them time to carry on conducting research because, you know, following that time, there will be a need to make further presentations. Also, I will mention again that Mabry is collaborating with the Macmillan Arts Center on the summer art exhibit. The theme is the 10 amazing places. I don't know the pronunciation of the actual title of this, but it's the 10 amazing places in our biosphere region. There'll be 30 plus artists will be taking part, including local First Nations artists from Snanawas and Qualicum First Nations, and they will be creating their works in the MAC studio on site. And I understand that everyone here did receive an invitation to the opening reception, and I look forward to seeing some of you there. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor Beal for attending this, and I knew that she would really appreciate it because it's an amazing program. It's only 3 or 4 meetings a year, but it's important to have representation there, and I couldn't make it, so I appreciate her doing that. And this July 6th, 1 o'clock, it will be an outstanding event. You wouldn't want to miss it if you're in town. I know, I'm registered. Thank you.
Thank you for the thank you. Yes. So Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to present my Access Oceanside Association liaison report. AOA members participated in the emergency evacuation route planning workshop that was hosted by our EMO staff. And on behalf of the group, I want to send thanks to Kate and her team for a well-organized and coordinated event. There were multiple groups that were represented at that workshop. And I think it was crucial to have AOA folks there because there are so many people in Oceanside that live with a disability. Also, AOA has been conducting surveys in the downtown businesses to see how many of them are accessible. And again, thanks to PDBA for their collaboration on this. Not surprised, about 82% of the businesses are accessible or somewhat accessible. So it's a good start, but we have some ways to go here. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gore. I wasn't sure whether you're going to do anything on Beach Fest, but I've been following the Beach Fest. So I'll just give a quick update on the Beach Fest. They have moved the sand sculpting event to behind the volleyball courts, the beach volleyball courts down there. Our staff team has been working diligently along with Milestone Construction and so forth. And the new site is all prepped and ready. The construction fencing is coming down this week. It looks fabulous. It's got those big raw peeled logs around it, so forth. And it reminded me, Councillor Gore anyways, and they also took the time to make it accessible by the beach boardwalk area, as they've done letdowns on the sidewalks and then let down, rise up on the other side. So it's now accessible anyways to those with mobility issues. So I was very pleased with that. I was very pleased with them. Also, they have added, is going to be a blue chip pathway from, I can say, behind the new washroom, right adjacent to the skateboard park. They've this added a pathway that's going to go from there and go to the eastern entrance to the sand sculpting area. And so that chipway is now in place. And so it's going to make it accessible so we don't have crowds coming all into one little tiny area. Now they're going to be able to access it from different areas of park. And the parking is considerably closer in the gravel parking lot behind the curling rink. So it's going to make it a lot easier for those people that do struggle, you know, to walk long distances. So it's a good news story. Looking forward. I spoke to Cheryl Dale yesterday at another event anyways, and they're looking forward to a much improved site and a new look for the Sand Sculpt and Beach Fest Society endeavors coming up in July. It'll be here before we know it. So look forward to that. And thanks for indulging me without notice. It just happened. Thank you, Council. Any other reports that were on the? Go ahead, Councilor Martin. We're just.
Not a report. It's a thank you
Sure.
for the staff here getting Canada Day organized for us, because that's the next event for the July 1st. It's a big event with the parade and everything for Canada Day.
Yeah,
and I think the staff needs to be recognized that how hard they work to make it
it's going to be great.
seamless and wonderful and seem perfect.
I know.
I enjoyed last time. Thank you.
I love summertime in Parksville. It's crazy. It's beautiful. Yeah, I have to say, Councillor Fraz and I were just talking about, you know, Parksville in general, and being a pilot, of course, Councillor Fraz has a very special perspective of flying over Parksville on a regular basis. And it just to actually see the people and all the activities, 4,000 people at the food truck festival. That's 1/4 of the population of Parksville. So it's just an amazing place to be. And, you know, as Councillor Fraz mentioned, you know, from the air is even more spectacular, but then we're on the ground here. We're the ones that get to enjoy it. So we're going to have a very busy season this year for visitors. And in typical Parksville fashion, I'm sure we'll welcome them all to our amazing community. So thank you for all your liaison work, everybody. It's vital to our community, and it's good for those organizations to receive recognition for all the good work they do. So thank you for your reports. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 91J of the Community Charter? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. I have a mover or seconder to go into moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor?